It is 5:30 p.m. and I will call to order the January 19, 2021 meeting of the MISD Board of Trustees. As is our custom, we will open the meeting with a moment of silence, followed by a pledge to the United States and Texas flags. Before doing so, let me first introduce to you the student who will lead us in those pledges. His name is Dennis Kuntz. He's a cadet captain at Midland High School. His college plans are to attend Norwich University and continue to participate in the ROTC at that university. Cadet Captain Kuntz, thank you very much. First, let's begin with a moment of silence. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one indivisible.
Thank you, Cadet Captain Kuntz. Appreciate you this evening, and we wish you the very best on your academic career in your life. All right, next, presentations, recognitions, awards, announcements. I guess the information begins on page 4 of our meeting packet. Ms. Ladd, welcome.
Thank you, President Davis, trustees, and Superintendent Dixon. Trustees, the challenge involved in providing an excellent educational experience for the many varied students in our district is a challenge that requires dedication and creativity in the best of times. The year 2020, however, was not the best of times. This past year required an unusual combination of skills and talents from district leaders. Unexpected circumstances resulted in changes in laws and regulations, and those statewide changes required adaptability, quick problem solving, teamwork, and leadership. In 2020, navigating through unfamiliar waters became a daily task, complicated by the many differing opinions and desires of your constituents. These uncertain and sometimes treacherous circumstances created challenges for even the most seasoned among us. A steady hand on the rudder was absolutely required, and that's exactly what our school board provided. Our trustees came through when we needed them most this past year, charting a course that protected our most vulnerable while ensuring that academic progress could continue for all students. It was a daunting situation, but they navigated to success with unerring determination. Board service is a volunteer effort, accepted by only a few in the community. It's a tough job with no salary that requires an election and then mandated training. It's a responsibility that takes time, a mature outlook, and very careful decision-making. Tonight, we take a moment to recognize you, the board. We take a moment to honor the work that you are doing to help our students sail into the future. And tonight, I have a few very special helpers who are going to help with that. So joining me in helping are Ezra Logan and Maddox Martinez, Geneva Kanzler and Azalea Ailman, Demorian King and Jackson Jones, Sarah Reyes and Lorenzo Borrego, Ian Larson and Fallon Shoemake.
Thank you, Fallon. Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Wyatt Kruger and Chance Fleetwood. And Roman Hidalgo and Aiden Umana. Thank you. And with that, please join me in giving our board and especially our helpers a big round of applause.
Thank you, Ms. Ladd, and thank you, students, for the gifts and the cards. We'll enjoy reading them. And if you're going to include 2020, we also extend our thanks to outgoing trustees Fuller and Kennedy, who we recognized at a reception earlier this month. And welcome to our two newest board members, Ms. Joyner and Mr. Booker. Thank you all very much. All right, next we'll turn to agenda item number 3, our public forum. We have several speakers signed up to address us this evening in no particular order. The first one I'm going to call is Geneva Kanzler, representing YWLA of Midland. Topic, thank you from YWLA for your service. Ms. Kanzler, welcome.
Good evening, Interim Superintendent Dr. Ann Dixon and members of the Midland ISD School Board. My name is Geneva Kanzler, and I am an 8th grader at Young Women's Leadership Academy of Midland. This is my second year at YWLA. I'm here tonight to thank you for your service to Midland. I also want to welcome the new school board members and invite you all to visit YWLA. You have so many great things going on, and we'd love for you to come by and see for yourself. There are multiple celebrated things that have happened at our school. Here are a few. We have 7 Destination Imagination teams this year, and we have the reigning champion and runner-up regional spelling bee champion at YWLA. Our first ever robotics team took 1st, 3rd, and 4th at the regional competition and advanced to state. We also advanced 20 girls to the state science fair at Texas A&M. We have also run a marathon or 2 for some other girls and given back to the Midland community and hundreds of community service hours. In addition to all of this, we have opened our brand new library this year, doubled in size, and added a grade level. At YWLA, we have the best teachers and the most motivated students. Furthermore, we have adapted very well to virtual learning at the end of spring break last school year and at the beginning of this school year. Our teachers have been working extremely hard to make sure every girl is passing and every situation they have and every question they have is answered. Virtual learning was a very big adjustment that I and many others were petrified for, but YWLA made it a lot easier. It is a very exciting time for our school as we are opening our high school in fall 2021, and I will be part of the first high school class. I can't wait to see what my fellow students can accomplish in the next 4 years. We have big dreams at Young Women's Leadership Academy and are excited to move forward and reach our goals. Again, thank you so much for your service. I wish you all the best as you make decisions for Midland ISD. At YWLA, we'll be cheering for you along the way. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kanzler. Our next speaker is Brandon Hodges. Mr. Hodges has signed up to speak on 2 different topics. One, he's representing MISD homework. The topic is Welcome, Dr. Ramsey. And second, he's representing MISD homework, and he wants to speak on agenda item 8A, which I believe is the calendar.
Yes,
Because
sir.
he signed up to speak on 2 topics, I need to call on Mr. Pounds, our general counsel, to see whether he is limited to a total of 3 minutes.
Yes, sir. It's every individual speaking before the board is limited to 3 minutes total. So,
All right, Mr. Murray, you're the timekeeper. Mr. Hodges, welcome. You have 3 minutes to address us.
We would like to welcome Dr. Ramsey to MISD and urge Midlanders to allow her the opportunity to turn the focus to academic opportunities for all MISD students. For those being hard-nosed on this board's pick, remember that the state of Texas is who veils and complicates the school superintendent searches from local taxpayers. Again, we should be reaching out to Kel Seliger and Tom Craddock about changing the Texas Education Agency procedures at a state level for local control for superintendent searches. Our wish is to stop hearing about facility bonds as a main priority. We should allow the new superintendent to focus on earning academic improvements for the next 18 to 24 months before asking a struggling community to incur another financial burden on the working class. It isn't just the total cost, it is the value we're concerned with. I asked this board months ago for information on unutilized, underutilized, and raw acreage and still have gotten no answers. MISD is going to have to sell some of these non-core assets prior to myself or MISD homework supporting any bond or tax increases. Again, this is about value, and MISD has not been providing value in academics, facility care, or stewardship of tax dollars for at least 15 years. We welcome Dr. Ramsey and the 2 new board members, but we will be watching what direction this district will try to go. Education is a force multiplier and a gift we should all want to give to our children. Hopefully 2021, we're going to start focusing on the students and less on what the adults want. Regardless of opinion of those on this stage or in this auditorium, we will fail any bond that is not vetted through Midlanders. We want 18 to 24 months to see for all parties to see the needed, true, honest improvement from MISD. Sincerely, Brandon Hodges and MISD Homework. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Hodges. Next, Becca Heidelberg, and the topic is the 2021 school calendar. Ms. Heidelberg, welcome.
Okay, thank you. I feel very muffled with it. Okay, ready? I have to read it, sorry. Dr. Dixon, lady and gentlemen of the board, I'm addressing the 2 proposed calendars for the 21-22 school year. It has been suggested in meetings that those who oppose the intersessional calendar are not in support of all children. I'd like to start by removing that suggestion from the table, as my child has extracurricular activities that will have him in town starting August 9th. This is not an issue of summer vacation, but an academic concern for secondary students. We can all remember coming back after Christmas break when we were kids and having to back up and review after the break. I'm concerned that it is not ideal for students to have a 1-week break so soon after starting school and a 2-week break in the spring just before testing. It is also my understanding that the 2 study weeks will be optional for elementary students. The idea is for struggling students to have smaller class sizes for more focused instruction. However, with the majority of MISD students coming from 2 working parent or single working parent households, I'm not sure that the class sizes during those 2 weeks would be smaller. Since schools would not be able to require students to attend, the students who are behind because they are consistently absent will most likely not show up in the optional weeks. An additional concern I have is the burden of the intersessional calendar places on teachers. While working during the 2 weeks would be optional and provide extra pay, overall this shortens the teachers' summers, and our district already struggles with hiring enough teachers to cover all the classes. After reviewing the 2 calendar options, a former teacher noted that the more traditional calendar still provides an extra 9 days. She suggested making 6 Fridays optional prior to state testing for the students who need extra study. Another current teacher suggested after-school reading tutoring options. A third teacher suggested bringing back the successful MISD reading recovery program. Socorro ISD has had an extended calendar for roughly 30 years, yet their district only turned around in the past decade. I would urge you to see what other programs they implemented to reach success. If the intersessional calendar is put into place, please be prepared to provide the metrics by which success will be measured, as parents and teachers will want to see what impact additional time given has provided for our students. Once again, I encourage you to consider other options and programs, such as the optional Friday school, after-school tutoring, and reading recovery that would benefit our students, rather than adopting a calendar that creates a break in a crucial academic time for our junior high, high school, and sixth grade students.
Mr. Wimberly, welcome.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you that haven't met me, my name is Joshua Wimberly. I am the coach of your Midland Lee Rebel speech and debate team. I see most of you have met me or have received emails and various conversations. For those new to our board, congratulations on your victory, and thank you for the service that you have committed to give to our students and our citizens here in Midland. We dearly appreciate what you do for us. Before I get started, I would like to say, Ms. Counselor, if you're done at Young Women's, I could use you on my debate team. So we can talk about that later. I'm getting ugly looks from Ms. Siebert. Just a word of what's been going on. When Mr. Van Heuser hired me to become our speech and debate coach at Midland Lee, I committed to him that I would rebuild a program that had drifted off in recent years, that was not what it had been before when I was in high school back in the 90s. And in doing that, we have had an untold amount of success. And that is not just the result of my coaching. In fact, it may be in spite of it. It is, however, the result of some amazing students that I have and the support of our board and our administration. We could not do what we do without your help and without people like Mr. Horner, Mr. Van Heuser, Jennifer Sims, the people that write the checks and allow me to spend the money that you so graciously donate to my program. But let me tell you what we have done. Our season starts in August and ends in June with a national tournament. We are a year-round competition event. We have already competed in over 21 tournaments this season, all but two of them virtual. At our UIL Congress meet, we had 5 competitors go. We took first, second, third, fourth, and 6th. Yeah, OHS snuck one in on us. However, we took all the winners to state and represented Region 18. We will be there next month, and I'll be happy to let you know when we come back with those trophies. Our program competes against over 3,000 high schools just in the state of Texas, 24,000 high schools in the nation. And as of the postings of the power ratings last week and this weekend's tournament, I am glad to announce that we are currently ranked number 9 in the state of Texas, and we just broke into the top 100 nationally. I cannot stress enough to you, ladies and gentlemen, how important speech and debate is to me and how important it is to our schools. Several months ago, I heard this board discussing how we can fix some of our reading problems that we've got at the lower educational levels. I would urge you to please contact me. I have some ideas on how we can push our speech and debate programs down into our middle schools where they can compete with the National Speech and Debate Association, as well as doing what Ms. Siebert and the young women are doing with Destination Imagination at the elementary level. I would love to share that with you because I think we have great ways to grow and expand these programs. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Wimberly, congratulations on your success. And please extend it to our students, and thank you for all your hard work. All right, our last speaker this evening is Kristen Vasquez, representing Faith Vargas, Intersessional Calendar. Ms. Vasquez, welcome.
Good afternoon. I'm reading a statement that Faith has prepared. She couldn't be here. I'm sorry that I can't be here to personally say this, but I have to work during this time. So with that being said, here are my concerns, and this should sound familiar, at least to my board member. I have seen the new schedule and I have a few issues with it. If you have been listening to all of the board meetings, that you've heard me express my concerns about intersessional schedules for special needs kids. Taking breaks like this are never good to special needs kids and usually lead to regression. Christmas break alone, it takes about a week for them to settle back in and adjust into the school curriculums. I would also like to know, what is the plan for families that work full-time and with single-parent households where the parents rely heavily on the school week to allow them to work and set their days off? My husband and I both have full-time jobs, and we have had multiple daycares deny our children due to their inadequate abilities to handle autistic and special needs children. Not that we would be able to afford the cost of childcare in the first place. Our district is very diverse and covers a broad spectrum of incomes. This schedule would greatly and adversely affect the majority of the South and Southwest community of District 4. Single-parent household incomes also rely on our regular schedule in order to put food on the table and provide for their children. With all that being said, I would like to know what the plan is for parents who can't afford childcare and who can't afford to take breaks and weekdays off to stay at home with their kids. Or will they just become an afterthought and be expected to find another job or career in an already struggling economy? The after-school program is a joke and the money-making scheme that someone is getting rich off of. It appears that public school is being privatized and the taxpayers are once again out of pocket for bad policy and decision-making by MISD. I don't understand why MISD continues to push for this schedule, knowing that MISD parents have already voted on this 3 times in the last survey. We have bigger concerns we should be taking care of, like our schools that have water leaks or special needs programs not having everything they need, or teachers not getting paid for all the extra work they're putting in during COVID. Board members need to stop pushing their own agendas and start focusing on the real problem in our schools. If you want MISD to have passing schools, then you need to start putting your time and effort into fixing them instead of making it worse. Figure out what your teachers need to be successful in their classrooms and stop trying to put families into financial crisis because an intersessional schedule for some reason means so much to y'all. MISD will not be successful until we have board members that actually care about the teachers and kids. So start being the change. Thank you, Faith Vargas.
Thank you, Ms. Vargas, and thank you, Ms. Vasquez, for reading it for her. All right, it is now, we'll go to agenda item number 4, and it is 5:53 p.m., and we will go into closed session in accordance with Government Code Section 551.074 to deliberate the appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment, duties, discipline, or dismissal of a public officer or employee, discussion of duties, and appointment of board officers. And then we have a full agenda after we emerge from closed session. Thank you. All right, for the record, we emerged from closed session at 6:45 p.m. and we'll await for all the board members to return to the docket here, and we'll proceed forward. All right, our next agenda item is agenda item number 5, election of board officers. We will take the officers up in the following order: President, Vice President, and Secretary. The floor is now open for nominations for President.
I nominate Brian Murray for President.
Brian Murray. Any other nominations? All right, nominations are closed. We will take a vote to formalize it. All those in favor of Brian Murray, please raise your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. 6-1. Mr. Murray, congratulations. All right, next is Vice President. Nominations for Vice President.
Is it on? I nominate John Trischetti for Vice President.
John Trischetti for Vice President. Any other nominations from the floor? From the board, I should say. All right, I will declare the nominations closed. All those in favor of John Truschetti as Vice President, please raise your right hand. That would be John, Katie, Brian, myself, and Robert. All opposed, same sign. That would be Tommy and Michael. All right, Mr. Truschetti, congratulations. You're Vice President.
Thank you.
For Secretary, nominations are open.
I nominate Katie Wallace Joyner.
Katie Joyner. Any other nominations? All right, I'll declare the nominations closed. All those in favor of Katie Joyner as Secretary, please raise your right hand. Ms. Joyner, you're going to abstain? All right. Okay. All right, that's 6 votes for. All opposed, same sign. Mr. Bishop is opposed. So 6-1. Congratulations to Ms. Joyner. All right, it is my honor and privilege to extend the gavel formally to Mr. Murray. Congratulations.
I would just like to say thank you to Mr. Davis for all of his service and leadership and everything that you've done and sacrificed. Thank you.
And I would like to second that. And I'll give you a minute to speak, Rick. Rick has been in a hard spot several times and over the last 8 to 10 years. And from the time I've been on the board, he's been nothing but professional in our meetings and the way he's led the board. And not always have I agreed with his opinions, but always I thought he did it professionally. And so I just want to, again, say thank you to Rick for all the work that he's done. People do not know how many hours and meetings and additional time at home that he's put into being board president. And I would like to just give him a round of applause right now before he has his chance to speak.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's been my privilege and honor. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to make comments. I'd just like to thank you for, on my behalf, for your leadership for the last 4 years and the guidance that you've given us through the hard times. And I really appreciate your respect for the speakers that have come up. Even though it's been difficult subjects or whatever, I think you've treated everybody extremely fairly, and I think the MISD family and our community owe you a debt of gratitude for being a gentleman about attending the public, and that means a lot to me. So, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Robert. Appreciate that. Let's move on. Thank you.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is item 6, the consent agenda. Item A, board meeting minutes, is on page 6. Item B, monthly financials, page 29. Item C, monthly expenditures, page 41. Item D, monthly investment report, page 53. Item E, budget amendment, page 60. Item F, contracts over 100,000, page 63. Item G, AE local update, page 65. Item H, COVID-19 leave resolution, page 70. Item I, personal appointments, page 73. Item J, board gifts, page 77. Board members, do we hear or we have anyone that would like to pull anything from the consent agenda? Okay, hearing none, we will accept those items as approved, and we will move on to item number 7, public hearing, the 2019-2020 annual performance report, which will be found on page 79. And Dr. Goodnow, I'd like to welcome you to the podium.
Good evening, trustees and new officers and Superintendent Dixon. Thank you very much, Mr. Pounds. This evening, I am presenting to you what we call our TAPER report, which stands for, I'm going to spell out some acronyms for you all tonight, the Texas Annual performance report. And one of the things that's very unique about the report this year is understanding that we did not have any end-of-the-year data last year. So I'm going to probably go through this relatively quickly because there's not a whole lot of new information. But you can see in the first slide that we do have the taper glossary on the website. We continue to update that glossary. You can find it. You can also find the district's annual report on our website, as well as the campus taper reports on their websites. And paper copies are also available. Next slide. These are just the elements of the report, and I'll let you glance through those. Since I'm going to be speaking to all of them, I won't read them all. But these are basically the elements that the state of Texas will look at as they continue to assess our performance and ensure that we are accredited. So that sort of brings us to the first component, which is the next slide. We are accredited. We do have a superior first rating. So financially, again, that's one of the elements that will determine accreditation. And then our accountability ratings. And as we were last year, not rated, but the year before that, a C. So we can move to our next slide. The special education determination status meets requirements. This is a new formula and a new way to measure how our special education students are really performing and being served. So initially this was called the PB, I always get these things mixed up myself, but the PBMAS, and this is now moved to a determination status. And it is a very complicated indicator that actually I think the state of Texas is still working out. We met with last week on bilingual, and we have an upcoming meeting on SPED. We did meet requirements on that, and we can provide more information on how they're determining in that all those different indicators, but it really is a safeguard to make sure that we are serving our special education students appropriately, and it is tied very much to federal requirements. We can go to the next slide. The campus performance objectives are what we're looking at, and as you know, each campus improvement plan, which we call the SIP, that was approved by the board in the fall, aligns to our DIP, which is our district improvement plan, and it really is based on data analysis and needs assessments. They also have specific requirements relative to the state and to the federal government. So we do look at what our goals are in those campus improvement plans. We make sure that they're aligned, and that we ensure too, as we move forward even more, that we're implementing best practices that will improve student performance. We can go to the next. One of the things we report out as well is the violent crime.
Dr. Goodnow, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
It's okay.
I have a question.
Sure.
So when you say that when we have these campus improvement plans, and those are for each individual campus, and who is developing those? Are those the campus leaders in conjunction with you guys in Central, or how does that come together? And then how are we providing resources to implement those plans? Just brief overview.
It's a great question, and I think a lot of those I'm going to have more specific answers to.
Okay.
As I present, I've got 3 presentations tonight, but okay. I will let you know that they are developed by that like we have our district educational, the DEIC.
DEIC.
Yes, ma'am. Yes. And the campus has theirs as well. So it really is looking with that team, and then also sometimes you have subcommittees on a campus that might dig in a little bit deeper, kind of look at the needs assessment, and it is done in collaboration with district office. Now, I came in July, and I can tell you that it was a really hard July to start the school year, but the SIP is your driver. Okay. And you'll start seeing how our district improvement plan really does kind of drive those campus improvement plans, and the questions that we need to be asking are we really targeting the right kind of measures that it's going to move the needle, and are we implementing the right strategies? And so that, I think, is work that we'll be refining as we continue this school year for next school year. But thank you for the question. So what we are looking at with this is we really don't report on incidences, or we mask data that's under the number 5, basically. But we do see that we have that federally controlled substance violation is 15, and I think this is work that we continue to attend to, especially as we look at developing elements of our counseling, because we want to kind of go past just the use of controlled substances on campuses. We want to get to the why. And so that's some shifts that we'll start really seeing, I think, and when you talk about how we are responding to our students at our disciplinary centers, or even on campuses, it's peeling back the layer and getting to the why. So these are data points that we consider as we move forward. We can go to the next slide, please. And so we really start looking at this. I've been in education so long that to me this feels like a relatively new measure. But what we're looking at here is sort of the sustainability of our graduates and persistence into higher ed. So that the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board is gathering data for our students who are enrolling in 2-year universities as well as 4-year universities. The caveat to this is it's only universities or institutes of higher education in the state of Texas. So I know that we've had students enroll in Harvard, and we've got one who's been accepted, I'd heard earlier tonight, that would not count in this data. So they kind of are in the not found. And I think that there's other certifications or stackable credentials that can be incredibly profitable and lead to a student enrolling. Often you'll start seeing students who get those stackable credentials, and they may enroll in an institute of higher ed a little later in their life, and that's not necessarily being captured. However, we do look at this data carefully, attend to it, and it is informing our CCMR, our Career in College and Military Readiness Plan. We can go to the next slide, and we really are now looking at, again, student performance data, and that was lagging data from 2018, the class of 2018. This is STAR data from 2019, and I know that many of us have seen it, but I do want to highlight because there's elements of these pieces that are going to be themes. I think that you'll see in throughout the evening and while we speak to academics, and that is that approaches grade level. Midland ISD was in 2019 10 points behind the state. As we go up in kind of rigor, that meets level, it's 11 points behind. And I'm looking at the state, not the region, because again, we really do need to compare ourselves to more than ourselves in many ways and look at other districts that are definitely outperforming us and be challenged by that. And I think the master's grade level, and that's one of the reasons, the meets and masters, one of the reasons that we are sitting on a C, and as opposed to a high B or an A, which is where we want to be. So really ensuring that we're pushing to the rigor of the standard. We are teaching students to be able to perform when they do enter to the universities. And so that's the highlight there. If we go to the next slide, we're going to dig a little bit, and I'm not going to dig into this a lot right now. Again, this is old data, but the trends are still holding. And I think the piece that, again, I would like to point out is that as we disaggregate our data by really the economically advantaged or disadvantaged status, you look to that second to last row, and you can see those are some of the biggest gaps that we have with the state. And that is one of the accountability domains, closing the gaps, that is absolutely pulling, I think, our rating down. And it really is looking at the students who meet or masters, who are performing at or above grade level, who are ready to really move and be successful at the next grade level. And our students who are economically disadvantaged are really, that's your biggest gap, and the biggest gap within the subgroups as well. So as we disaggregate data, we need to pay close attention that we're serving students who've been historically underserved, both in this district, in the state, and the nation, and attending to students to ensure that we're not just getting them to pass the test, that we're getting them to master standards and be ready to be successful in their future endeavors, which is college and career. As we go to the next page and the next slide, we were looking at that graduation rate. We're we were almost at 90%, but we dipped just a bit. And so we're really focusing on, again, career and college military readiness with the strategic plan that was presented and adopted in the fall, with honing in on the areas we think we can really leverage. And then the very next slide kind of gives you where all of these data pulls are coming from. Again, this is a lot of data that's 2 years old, but we can pop to the next slide and look at our demographics and program information. And this is last year, 2019 and 2020. I think that there's some areas that kind of pop out here to us as well when we look at our gifted and talented education and attending, again, to how we're identifying our students and how we're serving. And then also you can see that students with disciplinary placements, I'm always looking at that as well, because anytime we're changing a student's placement, they're not getting the classroom teaching and not experiencing and engaging in the teaching and learning that's happening in the classroom. So peeling back the layers and saying why are students being removed and kind of solving proactively is definitely going to be, I think, some cross-functional focus that we're doing next year, or this year we're planning for next year. The next page is our HR data, and I can let you look at that. Again, we're higher at 1 to 5 years of experience, and we're a bit lower than the state at that 11 to 20 years experience. So always trying to retain those teachers that are in the mid-career. We seem to be okay at 6 to 10 years, but I think often there's research that shows us that teachers with experience can certainly often be some of your best teachers. I will tell you, though, that as a principal, I never shied away from hiring a really great, enthusiastic teacher when I could onboard them and get and train them and help them be part of a community. And then sometimes they can be your best teachers within a year or two. So we're working through all of those pieces. The last page is the PEAMS financial, and if you have any questions about that, I will let our CFO answer them. But otherwise, any commentary, questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Goodnow. I'm not sure that I should have opened the hearing there, but we will close the hearing at 7:05, and we'll move on to the next topic, item 8, district reports. And we'll start with the 2021-2022 school calendar presented by Dr. Dixon.
Thank you, Board. I was tasked with this project to look at optional calendars. It was my understanding it was discussed last year, but kind of on short notice to allow parents and others to review them. And so I have 2 in your packet. I guess it kind of boils down to what is the same and what is different. And both calendars have 180 days, and we're going to call one traditional and one intercession. In order to receive funding, they must be 180 days for us to access funds for remediation and any other further work in what I'm going to call the 30 plus. The state calls it additional day, school year, or something. Both calendars have a new teacher orientation. We have not had that in the past, and our new teachers used to come in and you just make their contract longer that year. They'll be on like a 191 contract, and so the first year they just work more days than the 187. But we help them maneuver through our Skyward program, discipline techniques, how to access resources. Currently, we're just putting them at the school the very first day they show up.
Dr. Dixon, can we get some clarification on that? I thought that we did, and Mr. Bailey may be able to speak to that. I thought we did have some sort of, maybe it's not called orientation, but some sort of new teacher onboarding. They start earlier, you get them all together, they do something. Am I dreaming that, Mr. Bailey?
So in the past, yes, the 3 days, and I think Dr. Dixon is referring to more of a specific instructional onboarding that really prepares teachers for what they're going to encounter in the classroom. Our onboarding has really consisted more of compliance. This is the law, this is what your contract means, this is your certification, all of those things that we have, the more compliance pieces, but I think she's really speaking more to the professional development that it's going to be expanded this year for new teachers.
But they don't come additional days for that, do they?
They start additional days, some years, in the past couple of years, no.
New teachers and regular teachers, new teachers and experienced teachers are on the same contract. New teachers
The past
don't
couple of
report
years,
earlier.
yes.
Okay. Okay.
Dr. Dixon, can you speak into your microphone a little bit better? I'm having trouble hearing you. Sorry.
Yet. Both calendars have all of the same holidays, and both have 16 to possibly 20 days during the summer, because we still have the residual. If we don't use the 10 days for the intercession, we still want to provide remediation. The differences are the start and end date, the week in October and March, which is what causes the start and end date, and then the intercessional calendar is approximately 2,000 more minutes for all students. All students would go to 2,000 more minutes. So the justification behind looking at this was, number one, depending on what numbers, and remember our data is so dead that it's hard for us to come up, but using our most current numbers, 51% of our students currently need interventions. At one campus, 76% would need it. If the other thing is that we have not been enforcing our board policy and the state law. The state law is if they don't pass the STAR, they're to be retained. If they do not get remediation, and our board policy says if they're not performing on grade level, they'll be retained. And we have not implemented that practice. So looking at those factors, we did, as directed by the board, we took it to the district-wide Educational Improvement Council. That's comprised of community, parents, teachers. I think there's an administrator on it, and I couldn't determine if there was any paraprofessionals on it. But I did present it to them, and we did then take a survey afterwards, and 67.2% of the people that participated on the DEIC said that the intercessional calendar would be the best for students. 32.3% said that they would prefer to stick with the traditional. Then we took it to the principals and presented to them. They're always a more lively group. And after dissecting it pretty thoroughly, we then sent to them just which would you prefer, because we felt like they were representing the students, the teachers, and the parents, everybody. We didn't want to isolate it to a group. Of the principals, 69% preferred the intercessional and 30% the traditional. So with that data, I have provided you the calendars. One of the things that on the intercessional, it is different than what was proposed last time for y'all. Last time, yours was almost like a modified year-round with the 2 weeks in the fall and 2 weeks in the spring. If it's really going to be a truly remediation intervention week, which is the purpose of it, what I did is I counted 11 weeks from the first week of school, because early identification is the key to remediation. The further you get behind, the bigger the gap is. And then 11 weeks from the first day of the second semester is the second week of remediation. This equals only to one less week. The intercessional calendar that you considered before had 2 weeks in the fall, 2 weeks in the spring, but one of the 2 weeks was actually spring break. So that's still going to be just like it was presented before. If y'all prefer to move it up or down, if we put it with Thanksgiving, that would give us 2 weeks in the fall and 2 weeks in the spring, but one would be remediation for students in need. That gets it pretty far away, though, from the first of school. Then we're almost at semester, and if early intervention is the goal, then the sooner we catch them, the better. So there's flexibility in all of this, how you would like it to see. Like I said, it has the same holidays for everybody. It's essentially the start and ending date. Those are the things that are primarily the biggest difference with opportunities. In response to some of the comments, the special ed students, we always worry about regression. The intersession calendar is actually better for special ed because they don't have as large a gap during the summer. They're home 2 weeks longer during the summer, and during this intersession time, those kids can come. We just have to address it in their ARD, which is their admission review dismissal grouping, or their IEP, the Individualized Educational Plan. If the IEP committee determines that they need to go during the intersessions, those parents actually would get then 190 days of instruction for their kids if they were placed in the intercession. I think it'd be better for me to answer your questions. I just wanted to lay some groundwork. The 180 is kind of the non-negotiable to be able to get the additional funding. Odessa did, when the commissioner did a big push on this, it's been in existence since House Bill 3. But with the funding now and COVID, he gave that as an option. Odessa took advantage of it, and they went ahead and did the 180 this year. So they're 180 plus 30 at the summer, though.
I have some questions.
Yes.
How many people are on the DEIC, and how many principals? How many people total are we talking or surveyed?
I can only tell you how many were in attendance at this meeting. 39 were in attendance.
So 39 people is what we're basing our percentages on, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And the principals, all of them would have been in, it was a regular 18 meeting.
Right. I would argue that that is a very small portion of the community. I've probably received more emails than that in regards to support for the traditional calendar. So it's my understanding that the remediation would only be offered to our K through 5th graders that would be state funded. We would pick up the additional cost of doing remediation for our 6th graders. Our 7th through 12th will not have, they may have offerings, but it's not going to be a structured remediation, and that the remediation being offered is only for reading. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that, so the other thing, would you say that we are also experiencing an attendance issue currently?
Yes.
So my worry with the intersessional calendar is that we're already having trouble having children come to school. And with the inconsistencies that we've experienced with COVID, I think that there's this need to return to a back to basics approach, if you will, and just see if we can start to gather steam by attacking attendance, coming the 180 days consistently, and trying to find another avenue to tutor, because I agree that there should be remediation. Do you believe that we have the opportunity to implement some other avenues for remediation besides the intersessional calendar, seeing as how it only addresses a certain portion of our district?
No. After-school tutoring has been marginally successful anywhere. There is academic fatigue from the day. It's inconsistent. You have to have additional transportation. The state tried that years ago with required tutoring. So extended day tutoring does not work. So other than that, I think that the reason, and y'all, I didn't really come up with this, y'all did. I didn't start looking at this. I didn't start studying it, but looking at the intensity that we could address, reading in K through 5 is what is needed, and the state is funding it. That's maybe a coincidence, but that's all our D and F campuses are K through, it's our elementary. That's who is showing the need. So I would want to channel our resources. I think that I have no idea how many kids or our teachers, so I would not want to start on a large scale. I would want to concentrate in our highest need area, which is the K through 6. Actually, the elementary principals said, please don't leave our 6th graders out, even if we have to ability group. Most likely, a kid in 6th grade that's going to need remediation isn't going to be on 6th grade level. So we'll be able to put them with the ability grouped.
But we do have the opportunity to, quote unquote, have an intercession either before school starts or after school starts. And the other question I have is, seeing as how the remediation is optional, I just fear that we make all these overhaul changes to so many people's lives, and I do believe that consistency and stability is important for the family unit. This doesn't happen in a vacuum. And my opinion with COVID is that we've had an intercessional calendar, and people are frustrated and tired. And so that was my question, is it optional to attend remediation?
I guess I don't understand the question. Yes, it's optional. We can have it during the year, end of the year.
No, I mean, the
Their
children
attendance.
aren't required by attendance laws.
No, they're required the 180 days, but the remediation is not. The problem is there's a consequence if they're not performing, and we need some intervention. Basically, other than the comment I hear frequently, the adult inconveniences, and the other one is, if we do the same thing, expect the same results. But doing the 30 days at the end of the year would be all of June and half of July. And I think, and then the kids would be coming back early August. I think our participation rate would be much lower. I also think the earlier that we tell parents, your child is behind, this is what we're offering. If you do not participate, he's in threat of being retained. If we wait and do that in May, and okay, now he's got to go to summer school, that's more the traditional summer school model, how you see it in high school. A student, so he needs to go to regain his credit, or he has to repeat the course in the fall. And that's what we'll have in elementary now.
As a follow-up to Ms. Joyner's questions, the committee that represents the 39
yes,
is representative of each campus. While I understand her point that that's a small number of individuals, they get campus feedback, and they are that campus's representative on that committee.
They're elected to represent that school.
We have had so you have smaller committees that determine significant things. There's no way to parcel that out. I mean, that's just the democracy within public education that there is.
It is an advisory committee. That is what the title of it is. And that's why we have business, community, and parents on that committee.
So the sheer number may not be as broad as we would like, but it is a representative cross-section of our education community,
right, but
including the principals.
I actually thought there were a whole lot more because I was watching the count. At one point, it was 42. I thought it was up to 60 at one point, but it may have been an indicator.
It may have that many members. But your results are just those that participated in the survey.
Just in the survey. That's correct. Everybody at the meeting did not have to complete the survey.
I understand that. I just want to state for the record and for the board during this discussion that I have received a total of 1 email in support of the intercessional calendar. And the idea that we're not putting students first with the traditional calendar, I think is unrealistic, because I think that the compromise is the 180 days, which I think everybody agrees is a great thing and we need it. But I also think that there is an importance to adhering to the traditional calendar. I've heard from working parents that it does not work for them. I have heard from divorced parents it does not work for them because of custody issues. And then what do you say to our 7th through 12th graders? They don't need 2 weeks off at spring break. Those kids need consistency and stability, and they need to have the opportunity to increase their attendance, and let's just get kids back to school, is my personal opinion, and I'm just stating that for everybody else, and so that you can understand where I'm coming from.
I've had a litany of emails as well, and mine are split 50-50. I mean, there are certainly people that have concerns about what we would call the traditional modified, the 180, but a more traditional looking calendar. As a divorced father, I share some of those concerns, and that's why we're having these questions. There are logistical issues when you talk about intersessional, but if it's better academically for my kids, it's something that we should be considering. Special needs is certainly an issue that we want to make sure that we're addressing. And it's not just the remediation kids. This is going to be an opportunity for the GT, pre-AP, dual credit, working on capstones. I mean, there is going to be opportunities within that calendar that are not presented throughout the school year otherwise. Obviously, I think it's clear that Ms. Joyner and I are on opposite ends of this calendar spectrum. One question I had is, I know in years past, it has been a concern of the staff. I saw tonight that it's on for discussion, not action, and they like to get that thing, Mr. Horner and others like to get that adopted as soon as possible. Are we putting our staff at a disadvantage by not addressing this sooner than the February meeting? I mean, is there concern from you, Dr. Dixon, that the further we discuss this, and I don't have a problem with getting community feedback. I get a ton of emails like Ms. Joyner does, but are there concerns about the timeliness? I mean, are we on the clock previous to even the next board meeting, regularly scheduled board meeting?
I think February would be okay, but we need to get it put to bed. We need to publish. We need to get our daycare providers in the area out information. Everybody needs to get the information.
And if I might say that last time we visited, and had the surveys and all that, we had a very lengthy discussion. The majority of the community was behind it. And in every decision, what they said, it was too early, too soon back then. But the majority of educators back then were for it, and the community was for it. And the emails I've received is they're for it. And the fact that we need remediation, and we have 19 campuses that need to be moved along, I think this is very critical for MISD to move forward on.
A couple of things I'll mention is if it's not a push forward to get it done, I think it weighs in. I think would be a lot on our new superintendent when she arrives, because the decisions that were made as far as the public and the district was the previous administration. And I think because it's going to be included, whatever the outcomes are going to be included on our new superintendent's evaluation on where we are academically. The second thing I look at is, and I understand Mr. Shetty and Ms. Joyner's point on being divorced, being single, and both parents working. Whether it's Socorro or any other school district that's on the same type schedule, I'm sure they have same type kids that we have, or in the same situations with divorced parents or both parents working, and I understand that. But under the same pretense of thinking is giving opportunities for our students to learn. And if we go with the intersessional calendar, or we go with the traditional calendar, parents need to understand, whether they're working parents or they're staying at home or whatever, that if their child doesn't meet the state standards on what they've had in the past, where their child's been promoted to the next grade, that's not going to happen going forward. And I don't know if that'd be a mindset change, or it'd be an encouragement for parents and or their students to enhance their learning to get us to the next level academically, that nothing's going to be given to you like it has been in the past to move to the next grade. So I understand both calendars. I understand the frustrations on both sides that the emails that we received. I just think it's an opportunity at this point in time to weigh in on the questions that's being asked from our community members, from teachers and/or administrators, to be able to answer those before I can come to a conclusion on which calendar I want to support. And I want to listen to my constituents and the people that I represent in their district on which way they want to go. So that's my summary of it all, of having an opportunity to listen to what the community and the teachers have to say versus or what our admin is saying too on what's going to be the best fit for MISD versus just jump to conclusion and then we get in the middle of the water and we don't have anything to paddle with.
I agree with Mr. Bishop. We need to listen to our constituency, which I think it's good that we're not putting this off, but hearing the feedback in the next month before the February board meeting. Dr. Ramsey will be here or near to, and that will give us an opportunity to weigh that about what's best for the next school year calendar, given, you're right, the pandemic and all of the other factors of the logistics that, there are concerns about. But I think Ms. Joyner we do agree on the 180 days is the minimum that we have got to get to. We have to get back to having the kids in the classroom as much as possible, given where we are academic performance-wise.
Dr. Dixon, I think one of the other things I would like to suggest before we come back and talk about it in February is, I think tonight is the first time we've spoken to the public about the possibility of the special needs students being there during the intersessional weeks. And I know when we talk about K through 5, we're talking about those students because that's who the state's going to fund if we're on this 180-day traditional calendar. I think we need to kind of explore the opportunities. What does this mean to our secondary schools? Are there chances for us to do reading enrichment or something? And I know it's not going to be paid for, but how do we budget for it? Can we come up with the money to cover that? Elementary students that aren't necessarily going to need the intervention, what can we offer in the opportunity of camps or something for those kids to be at school where they're doing something outside of the box that's not just the normal everyday classes? And I think we heard some, during interviewing 5 candidates, we heard different suggestions about what other school districts have offered. And so I think our community needs to have that information to kind of weigh it in, because I would agree if we're going to look at an intersessional calendar that is going to take this much time and this much change for everybody in our district, we've got to hit more than just the K through 5 kids. We've got to affect more kids, because we know, everybody on the stage knows we've got a problem even at 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, all the way to high school. So we need to find ways that we can affect all students and publicize the fact that it is, we are going to take care of special needs students. They're going to be available. Some of those items that we haven't been very clear, and I tried to answer a lot of questions on Facebook, but one other thing that I kept seeing, whether it's the intersessional calendar or the traditional calendar, is we had days in there this last year, 2 years that we've added. Mr. Rivera was really good about listening to teachers and talking about having that Friday off or half-day Friday to do grades or do planning. I shouldn't say grades, because my wife slapped my hand and said, our grades are due by noon, so if you get a half day, it doesn't do you any good to have a half day. That's for planning for the next semester. And so some of those things we need to account for, and maybe we don't need to have it to the extent we had before, but even the teachers that like the intersessional calendar or like the traditional calendar all said, we need to talk about those planning days. And I know we put together a traditional calendar, or y'all put together a traditional calendar, just to see the differences and let's talk about it. But I think that's something we ought to review too, is what kind of days are we going to allow those teachers to have some planning days also.
Dr. Dixon, if I could ask you some questions, please. This is a report item tonight, so we're not voting tonight on it, correct? It's an informational meeting. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
All right. And so the intersessional calendar that you brought to us this evening is not the same intersessional calendar that was proposed to us last year. Is that right?
That is correct.
All right. And the differences between the two calendars we have before us tonight, one being you call it the intersessional, the other you call it the traditional. The difference is on the first day of school, the intersessional calendar starts on August 9th, And the first day of the traditional school starts on August 16th, a week later. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And then as for the last day of school, the intersessional calendar before us this evening ends on June 3rd, and traditional calendar ends on May 26th.
Yes,
Is that
sir.
right?
Yes, sir.
Both calendars before us, I think it's been mentioned, I hope it's clear, both of the calendars before us this evening have 180 instructional days, right?
Yes.
And the same number of instructional minutes to go with them, correct?
Yes. Four of them are half days, 176 full days and 4 half days.
All right.
So that is built in the half days.
And to be clear, the 180 instructional days that are in the intersessional calendar, that number of 100 days does not include the 10 intersessional days that are provided for in the intersessional calendar, correct?
That is correct.
So that provides an opportunity to provide additional 10 instructional days during those 2 intersessional weeks during the school year. Is that
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And how many potential instructional minutes would the intersessional calendar afford students? What's the potential number of additional instructional minutes that would be included in the intersessional calendar?
Because of the intensity of the program, I envision that it will only be a 6-hour day, 5 hours of instruction, because that's going to be 5 hours of reading. And so potentially over the 2 weeks, they would get an additional 3,000 minutes. And the teachers would have an hour planning period every day, because I think they're going to have to do individual planning and a lot of assessing to move kids to levels.
As between these 2 calendars, which do you believe is in the best academic interest of our students?
The intersessional, because we have no remediation for these kids, 19 D and F schools down at this lower end. If we can try something, my crystal ball doesn't say this will work, but I sure don't think it can hurt. You know, dousing kids with 3,000 more minutes of reading, at least the gap will be closed.
Let me finish my questions. Let me ask you that you mentioned something about why, not just here, but your experience has been that after school intervention has not been successful. Why?
The tutoring after school, number one, it definitely has never worked in secondary because kids are involved in too many activities after school, so their attendance is poor. Tutoring is usually optional. We have transportation issues. Kids don't consistently come, and teachers aren't consistently there. So if a teacher is absent for the day, the tutoring gets canceled for everybody for that day. There's very little tutoring anymore. I mean, we've tried in-school tutoring. All that does is take minutes away from something else.
Do you envision the intersessional periods would be a smaller classroom, more
Yeah.
group instruction opportunities?
I do see it smaller class sizes with more individual instruction for intense reading time.
And focusing on the K through 6 level, what in your opinion is the advantage, if any, between having them come from, say, 9 to 2 rather than try and do it after school during the regular traditional calendar week?
It's going to be 180 days of inconsistency. The kids will come, they won't come, teachers will be there, will be off, whereas I think the intense 5 hours a day for 5 days a week twice, I would like to kind of compare it to our in-district tutors that we've tried to put in. Those people are taking those kids out into the hall and working with them individually and separately, I think 4 days a week. And that would be that intensity that we would try to do on a large scale.
Does the intersessional calendar that's before us this evening, does it have planning periods each day for teachers? And if so, how long does it have for planning periods each day for teachers?
For the intersessional portion, or every day?
No, as I understood, the intersessional weeks, the 2 weeks, they would each teacher would have an hour
That is,
planning day for those intercession weeks, right?
yes, instructional.
What about the
5.
regular school day, the non-intercession, regular school days? Do you have planning periods on each day for teachers during those days?
Yes, that is required by law. Our elementary have at minimum 45. Some of our secondary, some of our high school have 55 minutes, but that's required and that's daily. Now, with the intersessional calendar, I have that to shorten the elementary day by 20 minutes to give the teachers more daily planning time, and the secondary to shorten their day by 15 minutes. So 180 days times 15 would be what they would gain in planning, above the state requirement.
And do I understand that you just say that while the state will only fund K through 5, you've included in this proposal that we provide the intersessional opportunities for 6th graders too, because we have 6th graders in our elementary campuses?
That is correct. And I think that if I put them in a 5th grade class, I proposed that when I called TEA about doing this differently. If they're on a 5th grade level, they don't know how they're going to work it since the student is already coded as 6th grade, because there's a good chance a 6th grader might be during the intercession, there's not going to be grade levels. It's going to be on ability level. So there might be a 6th grader that needs to be down here at the 3rd grade. When y'all went to IDEA, you probably noticed that they're on lessons. The kid gets promoted with mastery of lesson. So there was a mix and match of there might be a 3rd and a 4th grader both getting the same lesson because one had not mastered it yet. So
And
the intercessions would be that way.
As I understand the proposal, the intercessional weeks will focus on intervening for reading. Why the sole focus on reading for those intercession weeks?
Well, for the first year, I think we need to not bite off too much. But we know that if your reading scores improve, everything else will improve too, your social studies and science. We do have a math problem. We do have a math problem on our state testing. But we believe in the beginning, my hope would be if it's successful that we offer it in all of the core content areas.
At this snapshot moment in time, what do you believe the percentage of students that need reading intervention in our school district?
Well over 50% in 6 below.
And that's district-wide. What's the number? How high could it be on certain campuses that need reading intervention?
Miss Adkins probably could give you something more precise, but when we were placing tutors, she had a board that had what percent of students needed interventions, and I do recall one as high as 70, over 70%.
How many reading interventionists do we have? Not Dr. Atkins' program that she's implementing, like MISD staff reading interventionists. Do you know how many we have?
I don't.
If I have some more questions.
I'm sorry, Mr. Davis.
With respect to the survey, were all principals given an opportunity to participate in the survey?
Yes.
As to the special needs students, did I hear you correctly to say that if a student's individualized ARD plan or IAE plan recommends that the student continue to attend school during the intercession weeks, then they will attend school during those intercession weeks? That's the proposal?
Yes, and we will receive funding for that.
And we will receive funding?
Yes, sir.
Will teachers be required to teach during these 2 intercessional weeks, one in the fall and one in the spring?
No, they will only be required to teach their their contract is 187 days. 5 is staff development, 2 are teacher work days, and then 180 of instruction.
Since it's not mandatory but voluntary, are you concerned that we will not have enough teachers to teach the intercession weeks and provide the intervention for reading that this proposal envisions?
It's not voluntary in the sense that that would mean unpaid. It will be paid. I don't know. I worry about having enough teachers, but we, as many teachers as we have, will be able to fill the classes. And I think my hope would be to do a premium pay them the hourly or daily rate of our top highest paid teachers. So your younger teachers who want to work and make supplemental money, I'm proposing for the 6-hour day, $300 a day. So that would be $1,500 per week, and also not require that they sign up for 2 weeks so that we could attract retired teachers, professors, people who work at the college to work that time.
And what would be the plan to try and ensure that we have quality teachers participate in these intervention weeks, not just those that want some extra money, but that would give quality instruction? What are the plans to try and ensure that if this proposal were adopted?
It would definitely be an interview process. We would look at the tracking of the students that they've had and the teachers' prior scores that they have had. In reading, of course, we don't get STAR scores below 3rd grade, but we do have assessments, but it would be an application process, and we would select those people in the spring for them to be trained during the summer and be paid for that during their training.
If the roughly 51% of our students need reading intervention of some type, or 75% or more on some campuses, do you think that there's a viable alternative to provide the intervention necessary other than this calendar or something like it?
I just don't know how. I mean, I budgeted just for 1 teacher per grade level, per campus, and it's like 125. So if we could start with attacking the biggest gap, the most neediest, the highest deficit, that then hopefully during the regular day, they can catch the kids up. But if we don't close that gap, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
I have a
And this
question,
doesn't preclude the upper level grades and the individual campuses, including their budget monies, to provide enrichment or
Correct.
intervention opportunities on their campus. Is that right?
Right. They've already asked if they could do something like, and some things generated are requested by the students, like SAT prep classes. We probably have that anyway, and so it could be dedicated during that time. Camps, science camps, things like that. We have outside people who also do activities. We could ask them reserve and do it during this time. Our 7 through 12, I think we only have 1 D campus. So our focus, our intensive care is down in the lower grades. But we have a thing called state compensatory education monies that are identified for students at risk, and kids failing in the secondary could access the state compensatory money for programs like this.
That's all the questions I have. I would encourage everyone who's looking at this to please, I did it this week or over the weekend, that on June 10th of last year, we had Socorro, Socorro, who's has had an intercessional calendar for decades. We grilled them on all the benefits and all the perceived problems or concerns, and so I was very helpful. It's about a 45-minute or an hour segment on June 10th. It's on video. I encourage anyone who's interested in hearing what people who have actually experienced it, not perceived concerns, but actual living through it, what their experiences have been. I would encourage you to look at that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I did call one other superintendent that I knew who they start in late July and they get out in early June, end of May, and they've been doing it for years. They considered going back to a traditional, and it had the riot the other direction, that the parents overwhelmingly wanted to keep. They referred to it as a year-round calendar, but it isn't. They still had 6 weeks summer.
Thank you for answering all my questions.
So the reason I was trying to hop in there is because this question is directly linked to what Rick was asking, which is if we were to leave the school day as is and release at 3:20 for elementary and I think is it 4:15 for our secondary, how does that change our numbers in the 180-day calendar in terms of minutes, and how many quote-unquote days do we pick up in instructional time?
Well, you have what you have now. That's what you have now.
But you said you were shortening on the intersessional calendar. The proposal currently, as I understand it, is to have the school day start at 7:45 and release at 3 o'clock.
The traditional also. Both of them are going to have the same
Right, but
days,
if we
time.
don't change the school day, which everyone's accustomed to now, we will pick up minutes, 15 minutes
But you're saying,
across every day.
oh, so you're saying work 180 at the longer day?
Yes.
We're just
But
gonna
we're
have-
talking about 15 minutes. I
Yeah.
mean, which I don't think in a day scheme is extremely hard on families. But what I will say is that I think that the burnout of going so late into the summer and then having teachers report, new teachers, correct me if I'm incorrect, report in early July during intersessional calendar, I just think that the burnout, the spring fever, the late testing, all of these things have to be factored in. And then the other thing is I've heard from families talking about, well, if one child needs remediation in my family and I've got 4 kids, now my family needs to stay in Midland, can't have a vacation, wouldn't be able to enjoy family time because this child's needing to come to school. And my argument is that I do believe that we have the opportunity to carve out time if we so choose to find it in the day for remediation. So, I mean, this is the way I kind of think about it, and I hope this isn't too harsh. And obviously this isn't you guys weren't here, but it feels to me like when you're doing a project on your house and the contractor comes and says, well, I can't do it on budget and I can't do it in the time that you allotted. And I do feel like the district, if we can go consistently for 180 days, we can come in on budget and we can do it in the time frame that we should be able to. Those are just points I wanted to make.
Is there a reason why the shading of the minutes, because I had the same question, the shading of the minutes was about the mandatory teacher prep time. Is there something against keeping the day the same length that it is and just adding the 180, going to 180?
Because kids would have to be there for that. If we keep our school day the same length, every child in secondary and in elementary will be offered extra minutes in the 180-day traditional calendar.
And is that option available on both calendars?
Yes, but
Can I ask you a question, though? I know you're going to answer, but let me interrupt real quick. So the current part of what they're talking about is that, and you mentioned earlier, you're having to have the people that intervene take kids in the hallway?
that's our tutors.
Your tutors.
Our lit tutors that we started this
Yeah,
year.
but they take the kids out in the hallway?
They go work with them somewhere, all individually.
Yeah, and let me tell you, let me testify to that fact, is that there's no consideration for our professionals. I can't tell you over the last 20-some-odd years as to the stories I've had to hear, and teachers have come to me talking about how come they're teaching in closets, in hallways. That's not an educational system I'm aspiring to have. You know what I mean? And by carving minutes out, doing all this, you can get it. Now, putting people in the hallway to teach kids is not the right thing to do.
The answer is, thank you, Mr. Marquez, you gave me some math time. By adding that additional time, and I don't want to use the word burden, but I can't think of anything else. You're adding 8 more days to the teacher's contract, but within the 180. And I would rather shorten the day, let them have some more prep time, than leaving the day longer. I mean, the 180s is in stone. And so the longer the day they go, that's just, I mean, we have the same holidays, same instructional days. The only way we can give them some relief or a little more planning time is to shorten that a little.
Well, I've also heard from several principals and teachers alike that the 15 minutes is really not substantial enough to make a difference in their planning. So in some ways, it would be easier to leave the day the way it is and pick up days when we're not in school. Or it doesn't have to be, I understand the planning issue, but I don't think that the 15 minutes a day is enough to move the needle for teachers. That's just the feedback I've received.
I agree. I would shorten the day a little. I would for the.
Dr. Dixon, about these minutes, I mean, I'll make sure I'm clear. That under both calendars that are before us this evening, they both have the same time that we start the school day and the same time we end the school day. Is that right?
Yes, and they both equal 77,580 minutes.
But that's what
same number of days, same number of minutes, and if we want to add 15 minutes, we are free to do so to either version of the calendar, right?
That is correct.
But your recommendation that we not do so is why?
I think that if you put the 2 weeks in for the intercessions, if you don't do that, you just might have to lengthen the day. And then we're going to make workhorses out of these teachers. And I just, I know we have the same holidays and everything, but kind of like what you said, is 15 more minutes going to make that much of a difference?
I think consistently for children to be in the classroom, and if you can find a few extra minutes for the rest of, maybe you need 30 minutes, but it's for every single child. It applies across the district.
You can,
the other thing that I would say is that I know that there are some teachers that would really like to preserve their summer. So I know that they're trading some free time during the school year, but they're also getting the flexibility and the rest that many of them want and need over a long summer. And just to say too, and you and I have spoke frankly about all of this, and I appreciate all your hard work, but I do think children need a real break. I think they need to get tired of being out of school, and I think they need to be ready to go back. Our children are overscheduled. And I think that summer is an important developmental period, and I also think that for teachers as well. And when you're in the traditional calendar, people are accustomed to that. They're used to the workhorse nature of when we're in school, and we get a summer. So,
is it correct to say that both calendars being proposed this evening have the same number of intercessional days in the summer? Because the way I'm reading it, 6th through the 30th on the intercessional and 6th through the 30th on the traditional.
It does, but if we didn't have the 10 days in the intercession, they both have 16 days on here now. I would recommend that you maximize, if you go to the traditional calendar, bring the kids back the first week of June and go the Fridays. So that would be 5, 10, 15, 20. That would give you 24 days as opposed to the 10 and 16, which is 26.
All right, thank you. Okay, any other discussion? Dr. Dixon, one other thing I wanted to point out is, in some of the feedback I had is, and I had a lot of teachers that weighed in on it, but a lot of them liked intercessional calendar. But they ask, is there any way to get those days front-loaded so that they're still out by May 26th? They're not coming back that 4 days after Memorial Day. And plus, that puts us closer to, the test here, and then here we are, and we're not wasting 4 days where we've lost the kids' attention because they've had a long weekend.
That's actually one of the things that Ms. Joyner, and we did go back and look at that, and I don't have a problem with it. The problem is yes, they would like to get out earlier, but what's the trade out? We could take 3 days out of the week of Thanksgiving, and they could just be off Thursday and Friday. I mean, there's so few days, or start earlier. That's really the only option, is to take holidays away that are already built in or start earlier to recapture those 4 days. So it wouldn't matter to me if they just want to get out earlier. They're going to go some long stretches.
Yeah.
But I've heard August 2nd floated as wouldn't that be the alternative? Dr. Dixon, it was discussed August 2nd, if we were to get out by Memorial Day.
We would have to either start
Yeah.
earlier or take away holidays.
Yep.
I mean, you have to get the 180, there's only a finite number of days.
Right. I think there's a definite buy-in, first from your teachers, second by your community on how we do it. And I don't know exactly what that is, but I know teachers, a lot of teachers I heard from like that intersessional calendar, just didn't want to be out that late. I'm curious, and it's just something to consider. Do you take 2 days away from Thanksgiving and save 2 days there? Because then you're still giving 3 days, only because you've given everybody a week off. Well, not everybody. All those that didn't attend intersessional, they got the week off in October. So they've had a little break. And I think that's important for teachers too, that some of those teachers need that time off. The other thing I want to be cognizant about, and we've really worked hard about changing culture for teacher and how we consider their insight. I think the 8 days is a big consideration. If we're gonna keep the 15 minutes or 20 minutes in the calendar, go to 180 days, because if you're giving someone 8 days and they're not getting paid for it, at least in intersessional, they have the opportunity to do it and they're going to get paid for it. If we decided to keep the day the same length, then I think we need to consider compensation, because now we've got all the teachers doing it, and how are we compensating them rather than just the ones that choose to do it. So there's a lot to think about. I'm going to encourage everybody from the community, reach out to your board member, tell them your pros and cons, and it's helpful too. When you say something, don't just say, I don't like this or I don't like that. Give some explanation, because that way we can help get answers for you. And if the answer's not right, then that's okay. But that way we can kind of help try to come up with solutions, because we definitely need to be listening to community, and we want to do that. So, Dr. Dixon, I appreciate all the work you put on this. And with that, we'll move to District Report 8B, Staffing Update. Mr. Bailey?
Thank you, sir. Good evening, board members. Dr. Dixon. Included in your board packet, I have provided updated staffing information as of January the 8th, 2021, and there are really no significant changes to highlight at this point. I would like to take a moment to appreciate those individuals on the COVID-19 response team. This team is inclusive of several departments, and the challenges that we faced over the last 9 months have definitely been monumental. And I want to specifically appreciate our district risk manager, Derek Dominguez, who is a part of the human capital team. In addition to all of his regular duties, he has been corresponding with all of the employees that have presented concerns and working through those duties. As mentioned, this team is inclusive of several departments, and currently the Health Services team is working on plans to assist our employees with vaccinations. As more information becomes available, of course, we will update you. One of the stated goals of the MISD Human Capital Management Department is recruiting, selecting, retaining, and developing exceptional people. In 2018, it became very evident that we were losing exceptionally talented teachers due to lack of quality daycare in Midland, and some of you may have personally been impacted by that shortage. Following some discussions with our early childhood director at that time, Della Fry, we began exploring what child care for employees might look like in this district. And for years, Coleman High School has served children and students, but with available spots, it was determined that this might be an opportunity to share those resources. In December of 2018, Coleman Child Care Center began accepting employee children. And very quickly, we determined there was still a great demand. And in August of 2019, the Henderson Child Care Center opened. And we are proud to to say tonight that both of our child care centers are 4-star Texas Rising Star Centers, which is the highest ranking that's available, and both of our centers are at capacity with very limited capacity at one. So employee child care has proven to be a significant step in recruiting, retaining exceptional staff, and we're excited about the progress. Kelly Moore, our employee child care director, is here tonight with us, and we appreciate all of those ladies that work so diligently with our employee children, and they are on the front lines every day, even through this COVID-19 pandemic, and we appreciate them. The remainder of the staffing update will be presented by some members of our team who are directly involved with the opportunity culture in Midland. And it's hard to fully define opportunity culture in a few sentences. In recent board updates, I've tried to present information in bite-sized chunks, but tonight we will get to hear from those directly involved in the work, and I appreciate them for hanging with us tonight and hear their thoughts on our exciting progress. If you remember, we're only 6 months into this, and this initial cohort was launched in the middle of a pandemic. So to realize any progress this early is a true testament to the work of the teachers and the leaders, the district design team members. And before Chris Hightower comes to the podium this evening, I want to appreciate 2 foundations specifically that saw the potential in Midland ISD and supported with significant dollars to make this available for our students. First, we want to appreciate the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, specifically Michelle Rojas, who has spent significant time in our district several times. And we appreciate the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation for their financial support of this initiative. Secondly, I want to appreciate who we might consider one of our most valuable supporters of Midland ISD, and due to their continued support not only of OC but of the many projects and programs that they support. And we want to appreciate the Scarborough Foundation. Mr. Grant Billingsley and Sarah Shaw are here tonight. The Scarborough Foundation has committed to supporting opportunity culture for the next 4 years in a grant of almost $500,000. And if you would help me in appreciating the Scarborough Foundation at this time for their continued support, and I believe they're here tonight. The work has already started, and as the mission of Opportunity Culture states, and Opportunity Culture restructures schools to extend the reach of excellent teachers, principals, and their teams to more students for more pay within recurring school budgets. I included in your board packets an article that was distributed to school districts, colleges, and universities throughout the nation about the good work here in Midland ISD, so it's exciting to hear about something that's good that's happening in our district and being a model for other districts that are coming on board. So there are many exciting things going on with Opportunity Culture, and at this time I'm going to ask Chris Hightower to come, who is our Opportunity Culture Director, to come and briefly update you on the pockets of success that we are experiencing now.
Good evening, Board President Murray, school board members, and Dr. Dixon. I'm Chris Hightower. I'm the Director of Opportunity Culture, and I'm honored to stand here before you today representing our human capital team that has been implementing Opportunity Culture, and also the campuses that have been implementing Opportunity Culture. Implementation of Opportunity Culture has been a challenge during this pandemic, but with the support we've received from Public Impact, our campus administration staff, and of course our teachers, Opportunity Culture is moving in a positive direction. I think it is important to show how this staffing model can help improve academic outcomes for students. So I want to make sure that I not only mention our residency program, but also how this actually works within our district. So first and foremost, we want to reach more students with excellent teachers and their teams. Opportunity Culture builds team of small groups of teachers led by what is called a multi-classroom leader, who actually is a lead teacher that is a expert teacher, if you will. Second, we want to pay our teachers more by extending their reach. So by paying them more and giving them the opportunity to actually work with this allows them an opportunity to stay in the classroom instead of taking other jobs outside the district or any other higher paying positions. We want to fund these positions within our regular budgets. But really important for the teachers, we want to provide protected in-school time and clarity about how to use it for planning, collaboration, and development. But as always, we want to match the authority and accountability to each person's personal responsibility. Board members, when great teachers lead small teams, Students gain consistent access to excellent teaching through leadership and collaboration. Great teachers advance by moving up and not out of the classroom. Teachers get daily support from great teacher leaders so they can keep improving and meeting the needs of all students. And principals can drive change through this distributive leadership model that saves time and improves instruction on campuses. So we have been progress monitoring this implementation to ensure fidelity to these 5 principles of opportunity culture. And this district implementation review has been part of our growing process with this, but we've also had this happening on our campuses that are in opportunity culture as well. These are the results of our School Implementation Review, or SIR, which essentially is monitoring the progress of implementation of this program on campuses. We have been able to identify successes and challenges through this process. And while the green, which is really hard to see in this, but the green measures on this show full implementation, the red show that we are not currently at full implementation in those areas. But when you dig deeper into the information provided to us from Public Impact with regard to this survey, we are very, very close to having full implementation of this program on all of the OC campuses that we currently represent. Our current reach of MISD schools, as you can look here, we have an emphasis on ELA and math, of course, but also percentages of students who's reached across all 4 core subject areas. And you can see specifically in this how we are meeting that in most of our campuses, but in some of them where we have smaller representation of OC, we are still struggling to meet that. But for the most part, we are on track. So looking at this, these are our measures that we have that we really want to push forward. We are looking to keep our fully certified staff. We are looking at keeping a high retention rate. But more important, we want to improve student performance. And it's hard in a year such as this for us to look specifically at the data that we have and not see the growth that we wanted to see. But we are seeing growth in our students and in our teachers. We are looking at improving their T-test rates by moving them up one domain. And we are also looking at trying to improve school culture where opportunity culture exists. But more than that, we really want to improve Tier 1 instruction throughout the school district. So currently we are at 8 campuses, 6 elementary, 2 secondary. We have 8 teacher residents now. I'll explain that in just a moment. But we have residence programs where we actually have student teachers who are getting paid to be student teachers that work in classrooms and are becoming more prepared to take on the responsibilities of becoming a teacher. We have 8 campuses slotted for our second cohort as we move forward. But I really want to make sure that I pay respect to our folks who have come here this evening as our guests. I can talk to opportunity culture all night long and tell you things about what we're doing, but I really wanted to get into the work of this with the people who actually are on the ground doing this. I have several people who I have as visitors tonight to speak to you about the impact that opportunity culture has made. A principal, one of our MCLs or multi-classroom leaders, and also someone who is new to the profession, who's been part of opportunity culture and actually now is a classroom teacher. So first and foremost, I will call Principal Letty Camarillo from South Elementary to come up and give some remarks.
Mr. Hightower, before we do that, do you mind listing the campuses that are in opportunity culture, please?
Yes, ma'am. So in our first cohort, we have 8. We have, De Zavala, Emerson. We have Rusk, South, Scarborough, and Yarborough as our elementary campuses. And the high school, we have Midland Freshman and Lee High School. Our next cohort of schools that we have for this, also here, we have, I have them right here, I'm sorry, y'all.
Sorry, you got a quiz.
Bonham, Faskin, Great House, Long, Pease, Santa Rita, Lee Freshman, and Parity with Midland High School as well.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thanks.
Ms. Camarillo.
Good evening, Board. My name is Leticia Camarillo. Good evening, Board members and Dr. Dixon. My name is Leticia Camarillo. I am the school principal at South Elementary. We are so privileged to be an opportunity culture school. Opportunity culture has made a positive impact at South Elementary with teachers, students, and has contributed to our culture of collaboration. The following are some of the things we have observed with implementation of opportunity culture. We have been able to reach more students with excellent teachers. Our teachers receive more support, and our staff culture has improved. As a campus, opportunity culture has impacted us in many ways. I would like to focus on MCLs, teachers, and student roles and experiences in this implementation. We have 3 partial release MCLs at South. Each is tasked with providing support to 3 teachers. This support includes professional development, planning, collaboration, coaching, modeling, and co-teaching. Teacher impact. Teachers get daily support from MCLs so they may continue to improve and meet the needs of all students. And more teachers achieve high growth. Students are impacted by opportunity culture by gaining consistent access to excellent teaching through leadership and collaboration. In closing, these are some of the statements the teachers that are supported by our MCLs shared. 3rd grade teacher, Ms. Carter, stated, "Having an MCL through opportunity culture has provided me with weekly feedback on my teaching. As a result, I am able to focus on specific strategies to help me become a more effective teacher to my kiddos faster than I would on my own." 5th grade math teacher, Ms. Trujillo, stated, "Coming into a new district, I quickly learned how the district functions with having an MCL's guidance. We are able to collaborate with him, and he can share his ideas about different activities. His leadership has given me insight into the classroom that I had not had before. I feel like I have a partner teaching 5th grade math with me versus feeling alone." Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Principal Camarillo. I would also like to bring forward one of our multi-classroom leaders who is at Scarborough Elementary teaching 1st grade, and that is Elizabeth Fernandez.
Good evening, Board President Murray, school board members, and Dr. Dixon. I am Elizabeth Fernandez. I'm a 1st grade teacher at Scarborough Elementary, and this is Miss Shandy Jeter. She is my REACH associate that works with me in my classroom at Scarborough Elementary. This is my 23rd year with Midland ISD. I've been a reading specialist, I've been a classroom teacher, and I've even worked at central office. Being an MCL and opportunity culture has made my passion for working with teachers and students come together. It is truly the best of both worlds. Seeing the daily impact I have on teachers and students makes me feel like I'm exactly where I need to be. This year, I am supporting 4 1st grade teachers and Mrs. Jeter. 3 of my 1st grade teachers teach face-to-face, and 1 of them is an MOA teacher. This is a total of 88 1st grade teachers that I am responsible for reaching through opportunity culture. Because I am working right alongside with the teachers and not asking them to do anything that I am not doing myself, I feel the buy-in from them is greater. This helps build the culture of our 1st grade students and that we are in this together, especially in a very difficult year like this. I've seen positive culture shifts with the staff. We're planning together, we're working together, we're doing the hard work, and we're doing it together. And they always know that I'm on their side. So as I mentioned before, this is Shandy Jeter. She, is a vital piece to the success of opportunity culture in our classroom. Shandy not only supports me, but she supports our entire 1st grade team. She teaches math, science, and social studies so I have the chance to leave the classroom and work with the other teachers on my team. She has complete ownership of the subjects that she teaches, and she works hard to guarantee that our students are successful. Her performance is on par and or even above that of the other teachers on our team. We have only known each other since August, but we can already pick up each other's thoughts, sentences, or even if I walk out of the classroom, she can pick up exactly where I was, or if she needs to walk and help another teacher, I can pick up where she was. So in end, I will leave you with a quote from one of my team teachers. This teacher has been with the district, I believe, for 11 years, and she's taught first grade for 10 years at Scarborough Elementary. And she says, I have the privilege to work at a school using opportunity culture to strengthen its staff. Having an MCL on our team has made us, in my opinion, the strongest team on our campus. The classroom training I have received from my MCL this year is better than all the trainings I attended in my 10 years of teaching first grade. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak this evening.
Thank you, Mrs. Fernandez and Sandy as well. I have one more to speak to this evening, and this is one of our residents who started with us in August as a student teacher. She graduated in December and took a job at another Opportunity Culture campus. So she was at Yarborough as a resident and is now a teacher at De Zavala. So please, Chelsea McMahon, would you please come forward just a few minutes, please?
Good afternoon, board members and Dr. Dixon. I'm Chelsea McMahon. I am a 6th grade teacher at De Zavala Elementary. I graduated from UTPB in December with my bachelor's degree. My university partnered with Opportunity Culture. Working with at-risk students is a passion I have, and with the help from my MCL, Mrs. McIntyre at Yarborough Elementary, and the Opportunity Culture team, I was able to not only observe great teaching, but practice great teaching and collaboration, which allowed me to flourish not only as a university student, but as an educator to students who need someone to be zealous about each of their futures. I feel that through this program, the students at Yarborough were able to learn skills through the collaboration that was displayed by Mrs. McIntyre and I. We truly were a team, and that was beneficial to the students' growth as well as our growth as teachers. The students were able to be reached in a more efficient manner through the teaching strategies that we employed in our classroom. The transition from Yarborough to De Zavala was a smooth one, which I think in part is due to the fact that they are both Opportunity Culture schools, whose mission is to provide support for every teacher, no matter how big or small, in order to reach and teach our student body effectively. Furthermore, now that I have transitioned into teaching at De Zavala, I have come into the classroom with the urgency that I needed to ensure that my students will thrive in every facet of life, not only the classroom. I am so grateful that I am a part of Opportunity Culture because I believe that this program is solely centered around providing as much equity as possible to each and every student, which is of extreme importance. The goal is to create lifelong learners, which I feel is possible through the reach that Opportunity Culture provides. Thank you.
Board members, I grew up knowing that one way we can make change is when we bring people together, and that is what this staffing plan does. Opportunity Culture brings our teachers together, and it provides them the courage that is contagious in the classrooms that we have. I do believe that we have the ability to continue this program, and I know that we can channel our common issues back into our common purpose in this district. Thank you.
Mr. Hightower, I would like to comment that we've, I've been here with the board trustee now 4 years and some months.
Hey, Robert, is your microphone on?
What's that?
Is your microphone? We can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, sorry, these things work different some days, but I just want to comment that I've been here for 4 years and 3 months as a board trustee, and I've heard a lot of good presentations, but I want to let you know that this is a very good presentation that'll stand out in my mind because you brought the meat and bones of what's going on in the schools, and I'm hoping now that I've heard about it some more, I'll get with the superintendent. Maybe she can guide me to, or get with you to get a tour. I'd like to see, the on-person example of how that's working. So,
yes,
and
I would love to
I'm
have
very
the board.
inspired about what I heard here tonight. So,
Yes,
thank
sir.
you.
Thank you very much.
Other comments from the board?
Yes, thank you for the presentation. I just have a couple questions, and maybe you've covered this at other points and I missed it, but who decides which campuses become opportunity culture campuses? And then how do we kind of combat the issue of taking a teacher that might be really awesome on a campus that's still very fragile, but wasn't, picked as an opportunity campus? Where's kind of the yin and yang to how those decisions are weighed?
So first and foremost, the cohort that we currently have in opportunity culture, they were selected by our executive directors in our first round. This most recent round that we've had was a voluntary effort where campuses were given the choice to apply. We went through our design team in selecting those campuses based upon the needs of those campuses at the time, and so that's the process that we had for that. I would say the next level of that, with regards to the talent, if you will, we have a very extensive interview process. We use something called a BEI interview, which is a behavioral event interview, where we really can get to the heart of is this person the right pick for the campuses that we are looking at. We create a pool from that, and then the campuses are able to pick and choose who they would like to have as their MCLs for their campuses.
And I think another, just absolutely what Chris said, is that throughout, with cohort A, the first cohort when we launched in the fall or in 2019, it seems like a while back, but you have to also consider capacity of leadership and campus leadership. A lot of things are taken into account, as well even when the district design team evaluated the applications. If a campus is possibly struggling in an area with all of the work that it takes to actually launch on that campus, we have to consider, is this really the best place to basically select for opportunity culture to start? So there's a lot of factors. It's not just at-risk students or low socioeconomic students or any of those. There's really a lot of factors that we have to take into consideration. And then when you talk about, you mentioned about the teacher, within the recruitment process, we make it available to all teachers across the district. And basically they look at the criteria. If they are interested, they apply. And yes, sometimes that's where we get into some of the conflict, because it's a great teacher at this campus, but we don't go seeking out teachers. We do, however, make it available to any teacher that wants to pursue this additional opportunity. Right. And kind of, you have to let
I can't blame them for wanting to progress in that way. It's just, there is that tug and pull.
Yes.
If it's already struggling, why would we take some of our best and brightest and move them,
Right.
Right. And this action that you're taking, the opportunity culture, this is actually something very specific that the community has asked for, that, we've heard that we don't support teachers and we're not doing anything to help our classroom teachers, and, the logic and skill sets that are being applied here are, to me, I can just see nothing but fruit and fruition coming from that action, So, like I said, it's very well presented, and like I said, I've heard a lot of presentations here on the board, and I think this is, it'll stand out to me from now and in the future, because I really appreciate our community supporting it. I think it's a very key process in helping teachers. I like the testimony from the young teacher. She can transition from one place to another seamlessly. That's a big win for MISD.
Absolutely, and that is such a success story coming from UTPB. Previously, I've been in HR a few years, and UTPB, we've had maybe 3 student teachers in the district, and this year we're already at 9, so you do the math. Well, now we have 8 because 1 became a teacher, so that works out. Any other questions? Thank you for the time. Appreciate it.
Yes. And I just want to say thank you, guys. First off, appreciate the partnership between UTPB, ECISD, and MISD for giving us this opportunity. But I think it would be heartfelt to say we couldn't do it without the Scarborough Foundation, Mr. Billingsley, and I think Ms. Shaw. If I wrote that down right, I was trying to write and listen at the same time. But we really appreciate you supporting us and walking hand in hand with us to make this available for our teachers, because at the end of the day, teachers are what make the difference, or who make the difference in our classrooms. And Ms. Camarillo, thank you so much for being here tonight and sharing your successes at South. Ms. Hernandez, thank you for being open to take on this opportunity to train other teachers, and especially to Ms. Jeter and Ms. McMahon, however I said that. Thank you, too, for being a part of MISD and growing and taking a shot with us and hopefully developing a long future with us that you would have with MISD. So we appreciate all of the opportunity that you guys have given us. Mr. Hightower, thank you, too. Appreciate it. And I need, Mr. Pounds pointed out to me that we had one person go back for the school calendar that we had open for him. And Brendan, I'm not trying to call you out because this is going to sound funny, but when you sat down with over a minute left on your time, I thought, what in the world's he doing? But I want to call Mr. Hodges back to the podium for public forum because he had some comments on the calendar, and I'm going to set the clock for 1:20 and just let you address that before we move on in the agenda.
I appreciate that, President Murray. Congratulations. Thank you, Mr. Pounds, for getting that situation straight. It's pretty simple. With the alternative calendar that we're looking at with the intersessional, I had a couple of questions or statements for y'all to maybe bring back later on. First and foremost, if we've got campuses that have 76% of our students that are needing some type of intervention from a specialist, my question would be, how has MISD allowed us to become in that position? And it seems like no matter if we add hours or minutes or days, regardless throughout the year, it seems as though there's going to be some professionals that we have amongst us at MISD that are not doing their due diligence. So maybe we need to be looking at our interventionists and our specialists and our diags and everybody that are located down on Missouri Street, because I think, Board, that it's very important that our academic coaches and our interventionists are anchored and located at the individual campuses for which they're going to be stationed. Second thing that I'd like to ask is, or wonder about and get some information on, is how are we going to have 4 to 5 weeks worth of these interventions and only do them twice per annum when we should have daily interventions happening every day? I think that's going to have more consistent going on to see academic improvement for our kids than anything. But I think when we're looking at campuses that have over 50% of intervention needs, then that says to me that we have some personnel changes that we need to make and some tough calls. Anyway, thank y'all very much. But we definitely need to look at both calendar options. I'm not against just more info. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Mr. Hodges. The next item on the agenda is item 8C, Chief of Staff. This is a report only, and it can be found on page 113 of your information. Board members, if there's anything you would like to ask Dr. Atkins before we move on. Okay. All right. The next thing on the agenda is item 8D, Board Goals, and Dr. Goodenow would like to welcome you back.
Good evening. What a night. When you have students and principals and teachers presenting, you can't get better than that. So this evening I'm presenting to you our progress monitoring report as we adopted the goals last December. We're now moving through the calendar. So we can go to the next slide, please. I'd like to point out that this evening we're not going to be reporting on 1.1. That's the goal that really specifically measures the number of words that students in pre-K are developing in early literacy. But we are, through COVID and learning and transitioning, needing to kind of pace out that a little bit better. And so we don't have that data yet, but we will report it next month. We are reporting on the progress measures 1.2 and 1.3 this evening. The percentage of second grade students on track to read at grade level or above will increase from 75% to 76% by August 2023, measured with an assessment such as iStation. I want to note, again, that's an interesting goal because it's 1% over 3 years, but there are a couple of pieces, I think, to lift out of that, and that is when trustees voted on 3-year goals in December, which I think was given the reality of not just a shutdown last spring, but also really interrupted teaching and learning this fall. having to understand our data better. I really appreciate that we're going to learn so much more and look at what those 3-year goals are so that we can continue to be agile. The other piece to note around that is traditionally, if we look back over time, you can see that, speaking of early reading and early literacy, that there is a sometimes 16, sometimes 18% drop from the end of year data for our kindergartners to the beginning of the year data when they come in as first graders. So we're making up about 17% right now of that COVID slide as measured by this particular assessment, ISIP. I mean, not COVID slide, summer slide. The state of Texas has done a lot of work that pertains more to third and above, but we do know that there is probably at least around a 6-month gap that we were seeing at the beginning of this year. So all of those things factored into an unusual kind of goal setting. If we go to the next slide, I can give you the presentation this evening is really looking and helping us focus our attention to the beginning of the year, this year data. And across the board, we can see that this is what districts and states are encouraging us to examine so that we're not comparing something from 2019 to today. Again, unprecedented means it's never happened before. So the most important thing that we can do today is be very as clear as we can at the beginning of the year data, identifying where students have had learning loss, or I really like incomplete learning, and how we can accelerate them to get on track. And so that's the focus. What we can see is in first grade, we had 50% at the beginning of the year. Again, the data was messy. We got it in as quickly and as cleanly as we could. And we see 8 points at MOI at 58%. And you can see our target is at 65. Kinder's feeling like it's on a good path. But again, this is reflective of what you can look at the data across the board. And in Midland and at first grade, we're not seeing the gains as quickly as we would like to. So we've got work to do to get to that 63%. These are indicators and progress measures that really are designed to get us to that goal in 3 years for the second graders to be on track and really above, I would like to say, reading at grade level. So if we go to the next slide, just a couple little highlights in the data. We do combine what we report out are combined in English and in Spanish. We've disaggregated this in many different ways, but for the presentation this evening, we really do look at what our students who are testing in English and testing in Spanish. And so you can see that we've got 57% in English in kindergarten, and then Spanish only at 66%. We can go to the next slide, please. And so, oh, sorry, maybe you already did. First grade, again, you can see that our English-only students in first grade are at not at all where we would like to see them. So there's a lot of things that we need. This kind of data like just begs more questions around, are we testing students in the right language? There are certainly desires to test and see how our students are performing in reading in first grade. Also, it's important to know that when you develop those literacy skills and early literacy skills, our understanding vocabulary, connecting concepts in our brains really to the written word, that crosses languages. And so the skills that you're developing as you become an emerging bilingual and really looking at that as an asset suggests that we might continue to test students in both languages and kind of take that best of. But there's a lot of data digging that we're going to continue to do. Most importantly, ensuring that our students are developing those early literacy skills and growing quickly. If we go to the next slide, those are just some of the highlights I probably already spoke to. We did see some schools that was encouraging at our F&D campuses where they were getting some really big gains, especially out of that tier 3, which is students who are significantly behind grade level. We can display that data on the next slide. This is what we're pulling from ISIP, and I want to remind the board that we are making some very important decisions through our budget this year as we continue to consider how we reallocate funds to meet our board goals. And we want to be sure we're using the very best assessment tool that we have. So working closely with Dr. Atkins and other, experts in our community and in our district community to really do side-by-side analysis of the best assessments and the best reading interventions. And I'm so looking forward to our new superintendent coming on board and giving us her expertise in this area so we can make good decisions and adopt the best materials. But what we can see in ISIP here is where that red area is really what we call Tier 3. In Tier 3 are students who are significantly below in grade level as measured by ISIP. So we can see that we're making gains for the students who are struggling the most in kindergarten. As you go up, that line district-wide starts to flatten a bit, right? So what we can see too is as we get to higher levels of performance, we're not pushing students. Again, you can see this in the data over and over. We're getting students to approaches, but how far do we push them beyond? And it's meets and masters that we really need to strive for all of our students. The next slide, you can see the same thing again in first grade. Not quite so dramatic of a slope. I'm still skeptical of our BOY data. I just have to keep saying that. You have to question your data, but as we get more data every month, we learn more. But again, sort of looking at that flat line at the top, and those students, as Dr. Atkins can speak so much more eloquently to, if you have super detailed questions about the data, those students eventually are going to not be on grade level, right? So if it stays flat and it's a norm reference test and they're really being, other students across the country are outperforming them, they're not going to be on grade level. And so that's a concern. It's our job to grow a student at least every year, no matter what level they're on. That's our job. And so this is telling us that we need to pay attention to all of our students and differentiate. So there's a lot to unpack there. And as we continue, even this evening in our my next report, we can touch on a little bit on that. And really, I think the next slide is just kind of where we're going. So the report that Dr. Atkins provided on the lit work is very specific around what we're doing right now and measuring. There's a lot of measurements to see, the tutors, where they're going, the kinds of interventions they're giving, and then we'll see how that works. But also to continue some of the other improvement efforts that I can go into more detail with next presentation. But for now, I'll take any questions for me or Dr. Atkins.
Okay, if we have no questions, then we'll move on to item 8E, which is the academic update.
So I'm inviting Mr. Horner up here with me. As you know, or maybe you don't, but we are like doing double and triple duty now. So yes, we are missing Jill, but we're absolutely able to make this work. So what I really want to speak to you tonight is the work that the academic team is doing. And I think that some of the questions that you've had earlier might be clarified to some degree. What we are striving for, and one of the things that I could see even in COVID, but maybe even COVID kind of cracked this open a little bit, and it made it very apparent, maybe even more apparent, that the systems at central office, the incoherent systems at central office, whether that just be in the Office of Academics, meaning school leadership and PD and curriculum, to the campus, and I would say the other offices that make up central office, and that includes finance and HR and facilities and technology. We're really impeding our ability to serve campuses. And if we're going to have equitable student performance, if we're going to achieve the student outcomes that this board has charged us to and meet those targets, it's imperative that systemically we're coherent, we're focused on instruction, and that I love this, the leadership harmonizes our supports. And we're not bringing thousands of things to a principal so they can't pay attention to anything. And we're putting things exactly where they need to go. So if we think about this a little bit, you know, we've been building a plane all year since March while we're flying it, right, in responding to COVID-19. But what we've had the ability to do, even in the midst of all of that right now, is sort of not just the plane, we're actually building kind of the whole airport. So if you think about it, the control tower, right, over time, I think has been giving mixed signals to principals and sometimes potentially even, you know, I think we can see in the data causing some crashes. What we need to be very intentional is rebuilding that control tower. And that's what the Gibson audit is going to inform us in next week at phase 1, which is really going to be very much focused on our academic structures. So it's how we look at the resources, which is personnel, as well as supports and funding, and being very intentional. So if we look at what kind of our strategic priorities are, that focuses the work. This comes from districts that work, and these are things that actually have demonstrated evidence of taking districts that have poor performance and moving that needle pretty quickly, not just pretty quickly, within a year or two. It's understanding your theory of change, those big changes, and then really looking at what that means about how you shift your structures, your systems, and your money and your people. And then you can start seeing those school level changes that have to happen so we don't have 75% of our students on one campus who need tier 2 or tier 3 interventions, right? It's what's happening in what we call kind of the best first teach, that great classroom experience, and how do we implement those in a coherent system. So the next slide sort of talks to that cascade, Trustee Joyner, that you had asked about. Understanding we have our district mission, we define the strategic priorities. I can say that sometimes strategic priorities are redefined with superintendents, and that I think could very well happen. But I know that those priorities are going to absolutely align to our goals. And that's early literacy, academic achievement, 3 through 8, graduation rate, and then that career and college readiness. So how are we working to implement this? From there, you would have your district improvement plan and your campus improvement plan. And you're very clear that those things are aligned. So the next slide really points to, I start saying, what's our theory of action? You approved tonight the changes to local policy. In updating the board goals, in that same policy, we have earned autonomy. And it's the if statement. If we implement earned autonomy, then our students will see the academic outcomes that you know they're striving for and we're striving for, that will have them ready, prepared for career in college. What's missing in our current system is that we didn't define and we didn't operationalize this theory of action. So that's been the work that are really beginning now. Again, we're kind of building the runways of the airport. We're kind of getting the control tower in shape, and just in time for a new superintendent to really give us the kind of clear direction, right? So we're sort of clearing some things right now, and I can tell you there are going to be some tough decisions coming up and around restructuring and reorganizing, but it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do if we're going to get all of our students to get that year or more, which is our job. And right now we've got students who need 2. So what we're looking at is operationalizing earned autonomy. We've started this campus support system, really defines how we will support in an aligned way, where the people go, how they're the boots on the ground on the campuses, and how we're ensuring that they're implementing the best practices that have been proven to work, and how that's shared accountability. So as we define what campuses are less autonomous because they're in a threshold that's a lower threshold, threshold 1, then we'll hold, right, the campuses accountable, but they also get the supports. They get additional supports they need. And that means professional learning, job embedded, such as opportunity culture, right? It means absolutely having the best teachers in front of the students that need it the most, and other additional sort of ways that we can rapidly respond to their requests. So the next slide kind of gives you our first pass. Again, we're sort of testing the model at what those thresholds might look like. We did get input from principals last week. The first thing we heard was, we love the clarity, we love the alignment, we love the coherence. All of this work tells you as much as what you quit doing, as much as what, is what you start and continue to do. There's the strategic abandonment when you go through this process. So the thresholds right now are proposed at F&D campuses, and I do know that I've had some feedback that many of our campuses, and more than just the F&Ds, and you could absolutely look at some data points that would hint to there could be more. But if we're committing to supporting those threshold 1 campuses differently, we have to have the bandwidth to do it, whether that's from our control tower, where we're ensuring that we're getting the resources on campuses. We have to also be mindful that that means money and personnel. So we can't treat everyone the same. The point of earned autonomy is if they've earned it. So we're getting feedback on this. What the feedback initially is also telling us we need to ask some more questions of our principals to get kind of that co-creation of this work. And then also I think our new superintendent's going to be able to help us build so much of this out. As we look at the support systems, we have to think of what are those clear supports and defining that. So we can go to the next slide, and this is some new language potentially for some people. But the effective school framework, and I will give a shout out to TEA, because what's coming out of TEA in the last 3 years has been very concrete and tangible, and so aligned to the best research out there. And they're giving us the same thing, which I must say I'm, after 30 years, really excited about. But what this effective school framework gives us is coherency. It gives the state coherency and the district coherency, because we have mandates from the state. So TPES, if you hear TPES, it's the Texas Principal Evaluation Support System, and it's really our evaluation system for principals. You can see that we've got the TIPs, your Targeted Improvement Plan. That's that thing in the middle at the bottom. We've also have systems of great schools. There's so many different ways we engage and interact with the state, and they're pointing to these levers in the effective school framework and these critical actions that principals need to grow their capacity to be able to implement, and that we are committing to implementing on campuses that are Fs and Ds. So it really is a very powerful way for us to use common language and be very strategic in what we're doing. This asks for certainly for campuses to implement their targeted improvement plans and monitor that implementation, but it also spells out what the district commitments are. And it points to resources, staffing, great PD, protected time, all of the things that we've just been talking about. So if we're very coherent in how we do that and targeted in where we put those supports and hold ourselves accountable for doing it, it's shared accountability, then you start really seeing the outcomes and student improvement. So we'll go to the next slide, and I'm just going to show you a couple of things. This is we're calling essential themes right now. These are instructional expectations that principals are very used to. I would recommend that we look at this again and develop it with the new superintendent and develop it in line maybe a little bit more with the effective school framework. But these are all actions that we know improve performance. I think it's how we've been implementing or not implementing or over-implementing of other things that's been impeding some of our progress or kind of flatlining us. If we go to the next thing, this is an example of some commitments that we would make. I can point to, we've talked about an academic calendar. We've talked about job-embedded professional development. We've talked about supports that might be missing because they may be in a central office bundling curriculum or writing assessments rather than being on the campus, really helping to to provide interventions for students and building the capacity in real time with teachers. That's one of the things that's so great about opportunity culture is you're teaching, students are getting great instruction, and you're building the capacity of teachers to also provide that great instruction. So let's go to the next one. I'm trying to go quickly. This is a quick example. This is a just a snapshot of what is an actual live hub that any principal can jump on, or an instructional lead can jump on and put in an on-demand request that comes right to us. It's a complete feedback loop. We call them, we kind of get a better idea of what they need. We deliver what they're asking for, and then there's an automatic survey question, kind of like a Yelp review, sort of, or not Yelp review, it's more like an Instacart, that whoever gets that service will be able to give us feedback. Was it valuable? Did it help? How can we get better? And I got to give a big shout out to Mr. Horner for building all of this. This is live data. Anybody can, any principal or administrator or lead can jump on and request that. And then we're sharing with them where we are in our health checks. I hope that's old, because there's a lot of things in progress we probably need to clean out. I also do want to let you know that when we get the Gibson audit, we're preparing for that as we get vacancies in the academic office. We're not filling them. Right now, I think we're looking at 4 or 5 at least. So as people understand that there is change coming, and it will be pretty profound as we make these shifts. They're taking advantage of opportunities that are coming their way, and we are not filling those positions because we need to be able to have as smooth as possible sort of reorganizational structure, and that's a challenge. But I do believe that we're going to get there, and we're going to get there because we want to do the right thing. So the next slide, all of this is still being iterated, right? It's design, it's new, it's somewhat innovative for our district. So we're testing it, and then we go back and kind of do a second iteration and a third iteration. But to have this really fleshed out and up and running, and to have coherency again with all of the pieces of our system, we'll be in a much better position in June and July and August than I think we've been in a while. Any questions? That was a lot.
Yeah, Dr. Dixon, I listened to, as we listen to a lot of this information, you hear the word principal constantly coming up. Principal, principal, principal. So, the opportunity culture, portion of it, working seamlessly, transitioning from one school to the other. But where's the opportunity culture for the principals that are not able to succeed in a sense? Because there's some people can dream it and make it happen in a sense. And then there's some people that are trying to get there, but don't exactly know the resources and needs that need to come to them. They might not be aggressive enough to say, hey, look, no, the capital dollars need to come to this campus, like right now. Where can you tell me in a sense of that, in that bottleneck per se between the district, the staff, and the principal, where do we get that hump over as far as getting the principal, whether they know or don't know what the resources they need to pull their campus? I mean, how would you characterize that?
In our current structure, we haven't built that, right? So what we're doing at this point at our level is really looking at where do the resources need to go, and that's a critical one. So I was meeting with Dr. Dixon today and pointing out Gibson will give us in a week with our benchmark districts that have about, similar size, similar demographics, and much higher performance. Structures that build the capacity of either principals through a pipeline so that they're ready, they're assistant principals that are ready, and or what some structures have what you might call executive principals that really may have 2 or 3 campuses, and they're working, again, much like opportunity culture. You take a great teacher and you give them teachers and all the students. This would be an executive principal position, perhaps, that would have responsibility for 2 or 3 campuses, not necessarily be their evaluator, right? But they're definitely building in real time the capacity of that principal. I haven't proposed that structure yet. We want to get the data back from Gibson. And then also, I really do think it will be critical to get the new superintendent's input on how that has worked in her experience. Dr. Dixon?
One of the things that I just talked to the foundation about starting a principal academy, an aspiring principal and experienced principal. And they're very interested, their board is talking about doing that, to do just the things like you said, learn everything there is about the transportation department, the business office, the resources, the foundation of the resources, and I'm hoping that that is something that does get launched, and we talked about it for the first year principal and the second year and the third. So a pre-flight, in-flight, and then the moon or whatever. But if you recall the IDEA model, they do like the opportunity culture has the teacher in residence. They have principals in residence where they're in training. They're just on a teacher salary, and they work under a highly skilled, qualified principal, a proven entity. So on a daily basis, it's hands-on training. That is so much better than mentoring. Mentoring is just somebody to vent with.
Right.
But I agree that the most important person in this district is the teacher, and the second is the principal. And all of our energies need to go towards those. And so I think you're right, and I hope that we are able to launch some type of an academy, and like to become an assistant principal, and then when you become an assistant principal, to become a principal. So get some of those skills and knowledge, at least a foundation. And Lisa had a good point. We've just been kind of taking our money and dividing it by 25 elementary schools or whatever. Money should follow the needs of the student. And that's how we earn the entitlement, is by their needs. And it needs to go back out by that. And she and I think Miss Spencer and maybe Miss Warren were all, and I know Mr. Dodds, he's trying to get a framework for them so that it's not just a flat amount that each campus gets for each student. We're going to look at the needs on that campus.
And we talked about that already several years ago. Of course, it's part of the system of great schools that's supposed to be implemented by 2027, but we want it now, obviously. But student-based budgeting was the work that's been going on, and that's what you're, I think, alluding to, the fact that we've been trying to implement that student-based budgeting. Excuse me, budgeting. But so, well, thank you for the information, and like I said, it's you know, once again, the community, you know, starts asking those questions. You know, they're like, well, why do y'all put so much on the dang principal? You know what I mean? And then later, you know, it's also, why do you put so much on a teacher? You know, and it is true. You know, you take a principal that's not in tune or up to speed, put them in a campus, and you know, the lag time is just unreal. You know, you just can't with the today's demand, different systems, PLCs, so forth. You know, it feels a bit much for a principal even to try to navigate that portion of it. Of course, we've talked about, you know, having the assistant principal do discipline only, and then the principal does only but academics, you know. And so, once again, I'm not suggesting what needs to be done, because that's crossing the line. So, but Thank you for the information regarding the principals. So.
Just very briefly, when you say that you're testing this system that we're talking about, how are we doing that and what are the metrics associated with understanding if we're being successful with this?
So the first piece is really just, are the principals using this? And it's a shift for them. And so how do we, what are the behaviors we need to address? I can tell you they're not going to use it if we don't respond, right? So ensuring that, again, with the caveat that there are fewer of us every day to respond, but that we're doing, we are at least reaching out and finding out how we can help them. And that's why it's important to use the system so we can document what they need. That informs our next steps. Where do we need to provide more professional development? And it really is, it's all captured in that hub that I showed you. So there's a back end and a live dashboard that we're building.
And it's in a certain rating, obviously if you're deficient, you would think that the campus principal would be screaming, on a daily basis for something, So to me, it makes logic that if somebody's not asking for those resources, apparently the person's not able to grasp the gravity of the situation and the resources they need and how to move them forward. So that's why I'm asking about the principal, because that's, fine and dandy, take somebody and put them in there and call them principal and just overload them to no end. And they have no support and they have no vision and they might not have an understanding. They might have it in 3 years, but we can't wait 3 years.
Any other comments? Well, Dr. Goodenow and Mr. Horner, I want to say thank you for the work. I picked out a couple of things that you said that resonate with me, and the only thing I feel bad about is we're almost 4 years into this plan and we're just now setting the bar. But I appreciate the fact that you pointed out accountability, responsibility, and an action plan with the standard of expectations, because that's where we need, and that's where our principals know how they can move the bar and improve their status. So I appreciate that. I'm also looking forward to the report being published by Gibson so that Dr. Ramsey has that kind of as a playbook to start with on day one. So I'm glad that is near perfect timing. So I appreciate your help and the plan that you put forward today. Thank you. Okay, next we'll move to item 8F, and that's Innovation Update, Coleman Redesign. And Dr. Kell, welcome to the podium.
Thank y'all. Thanks for holding on tonight. First thing I want to do, President Murray, Board, and Dr. Dixon, is thank you for this opportunity that we've had, and thanks to everybody that's been involved in this process. It has not just been the Transformation Office. I am just the spokesperson. It has been Lee High School, Midland High School, district personnel, Mr. Horner, Ms. Janasek, Ms. Harper, Coleman High School staff and administration, Kenya Thomas is our school design fellow who's here this evening, Michelle Jones from the Transformation Office. A lot of people have been working on this, and we're excited about what we're bringing for you. So the first thing I want to do is talk about why the Coleman High School redesign is so important. Let me make sure I'm... Number one, students. That's the bottom line. It's important because of students, because we are increasing opportunities for our kids, and that is the most important thing that we can do as a district besides meeting the student outcomes for those kids. It has been a campus-initiated process. In fall of 2018, there was a presentation in the Call for Quality, and Mr. Moore presented a plan, and we have built upon that plan across the time. Number three is changing the community perception. When you go and ask somebody what is Coleman High School, they're going to tell you it's that school for pregnant kids. Less than 10% of our kids, according to Mr. Horner's statistics, have kids that have children and our parents that attend Coleman. So it's important that we change that perception across the community and open up the opportunities that we have for Coleman to serve our most at-risk kids. Lastly, accountability is a reason. Number one, we've got to meet the mission of the district that y'all set forward. We can do that through increasing attainment of our board goals, because these board goals hit those 3 items that are bulleted up there, as Coleman is a secondary campus. Also, state and federal accountability is extremely important. Coleman is a multi-year comprehensive status under federal accountability, and it's important that we can address that by being proactive in what we're doing with this campus. Instead of waiting for the state to tell us to do something, we're being proactive in this. Things that we want to keep at Coleman, number one is campus branding. The name of that campus, the branding of that campus is critical to our community, and we want to make sure that we maintain the importance of that. At-risk programming, that school is designated as an alternative education accountability campus, therefore it must maintain 75% of at-risk enrollment. There are indicators designated by the state for at-risk, and so that will be a critical component as we move forward enrolling other students. It will continue to serve our special services students as well as our English learners. So what is the redesign? First and foremost, it is an academic programming redesign. We are adding an education program of study where kids can get their educational aid industry certification, which helps with CCMR. We are also looking at adding a public services program of study. This also will only be available at Coleman and no other high school. It will have our firefighter and our emergency services industry certifications, which are critical. And in year 2, we'll look at adding our law enforcement industry certification. It will also look at an intersessional calendar. For the most part, we will follow whatever calendar is approved by the board, whether it's the intersessional calendar or a traditional calendar. But the key component is that in the summer, there will be opportunities for students to attend school at Coleman, and we will look at title funds and state compensatory education funds to fund that opportunity. And then virtual program for the district for grades 9 through 12. We want to look at housing all of that at Coleman, and that hinges upon legislation that hopefully will be forthcoming in this current session. Continuing that is a cultural and climate shift for our kids. We want the kids to be proud of attending Coleman. We want the teachers to be excited there. We want the administration to be excited, and we want the community to be excited about what we have offering. And as we partner with the city, the Workforce Commission, in Midland College, on the Firefighter Academy and the Public Services Academy, all of that will create a new sense of excitement. We will launch into a public relations campaign to brand and provide more information so that the community is aware of these changes. We have grant funds to help with that, and we'll be working closely with Ms. Ladd's department on that. Increased enrollment, we look at adding capacity by 240 students by the year 22-23 is our goal. So that it will serve a total of 420 students. 200 of those will be virtual at a minimum. Staffing changes could occur based upon some new job descriptions. We're still working through what that could look like. And then the addition of 2 portable buildings for the Public Service Academy. We are currently working with Ms. Spencer's department to see if there's any additional portables with decreased enrollment that could be moved there. We don't know, but we wanted to make sure that we have that as a possibility and everyone is aware. That was fast. What questions might y'all have? I win the prize.
I would like to make the comment that I think Ms. Viola Coleman would be extremely happy at the progress that's going to happen here. And, she gave so much to this community. I think it's going to continue to shine and just prove out for Midland, So just want to say appreciate that. And I want to recognize that her giving exists. I think it's been forgotten by some people, But I think this, showcases, I think it's a great thing for Midland. Thank you.
Other comments, questions?
Sorry, I have one, and I think you answered this the other day, but I just want to ask a clarifying question, which is the curriculum that will be used for our on-campus learners at Coleman will be different, or is it the same as what will be implemented for the online students? I just am not clear on that.
I'm going to let Mr. Horner address that question.
Thank you.
It's a great question. So currently we use direct instruction combined with a platform. I'll just call it at minimum, it's Plato is the platform. So that is something we actually added in for some of our virtual instruction for regular schools to deal with COVID as a response to supporting teachers. So they currently use Plato. We would continue to use Plato. We also blend that with direct instruction. So for the most at-risk kids, that model will not change.
That Plato is the online curriculum that is being supplemented by in-person instruction currently.
Exactly.
And then the online students, moving forward, non-COVID, hopefully, how will that structure look like? If it's not Plato and there's not additional subsequent, will it be something different?
So one of the additional costs, because the overall there is a slight cost, and one of the newer costs is adding licenses to be able to support the additional 200. So by moving around staff, we'll have teachers there, teachers of record that would be working in a similar manner. We know that generally speaking, there's going to be more success. We've seen a lot of students right now in our virtual model that have been really successful. Those would be those candidates, that would be virtual continuously. So, I'm sorry, I'm mixing the name. Plato is Admentum. Back when I taught, it was always Plato. So if I interchange the title, the overall company is Admentum, and Plato is probably an old name. So, but essentially, virtually. Comments about my age now, so. But it would be Plato with teacher intervention, teacher contact, teacher communication, teacher tutorials, teacher one-on-one time, et cetera, along with, using the testing center for supporting that virtual instruction. So there's confidence in that virtual capacity.
Okay, so if I'm understanding, the virtual component that will be the same. There will be people in place assigned to helping our online students, but the curriculum will be uniformed for our online students and our Coleman in-person students?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And can I, Mr. Jones, if I can just add to that. So curriculum-wise, it's important. So just because these are at-risk students, we still have to certify that they meet the standards according to, the TEKS and the requirements under the Texas TEA, all those requirements. They don't change for an at-risk students, so we provide services and extra attention in different manners, but the content still meets the standards and doesn't matter if they're an at-risk student or a virtual student.
Any other comments? Well, thank you, Dr. Kell and Mr. Horner. Again, you get to keep jumping back up there, but this is really good work. Work around a school that will be MISDs and basically homegrown. And so I appreciate the opportunity that you've given our teachers and our staff, and especially our students, to earn some additional certificates and more opportunities. So thank you. Next item is item 8G, operations update. Ms. Spencer, welcome.
Good evening, President Murray, trustees, and Superintendent Dixon. I'm going to take the prize away from Dr. Kell and give the brief report tonight, since I am the last report before my amazing colleagues can leave. Just as a reminder, we have begun phase 4 of our COVID rapid 19 testing this week. The intent of this testing was to align with the updated CDC guidelines that essentially stated when diagnostic testing resources are sufficient and available, then quarantine can end after day 7 with a negative test result and no symptoms. The goal is to have our teachers and our students back in the classrooms as quickly and as safely as possible. These tests are administered by our trained nurses. We have 41 nurses, 1 director, and 39 campus nurses, as well as 1 COVID response nurse. The COVID response nurse is not administering tests, but all of those who are giving the test are RNs, with the exception of 1 who is an LVN. Our testing is targeted. We are testing specifically symptomatic students and staff on if they're showing symptoms on campus, and then asymptomatic in an effort for day 7, so they may return on day 8. To date, we have tested 204 employees and received 37 positive results, and 32 students with 3 positive results. All testing is completely voluntary. Those of you who are parents in the district received an email with the parent permission form. We recognize that not all of our parents have the capability potentially to print that form, so that will be coming home very soon in a hard copy format as well. If they do not return the form, and a student is exhibiting symptoms on campus, nurses will call, explain the process, and there is an opportunity to provide permission over the phone as well. I do want to emphasize that even with that testing, we're not going to test a child without notifying a parent or guardian first. So if a student is presenting symptoms at school, of course they will be sent to the nurse, and then the nurse will contact the parent, even with signed permission in hand, to let them know that that test is going to be administered. I also want to emphasize that this testing is absolutely free. We are participating in a program provided by the federal government. The tests are provided to us for free. We are not charging for the tests, nor are we asking for insurance information from our families. Mr. Bailey mentioned briefly in his presentation, we have the Midland Health Department is giving us access to approximately 180 vaccinations this week that will be available for our employees who fall into level 1 or category 1B. Information has been sent to all of those employees to date to identify those who are interested in obtaining that vaccination. And then we will then begin extending that opportunity to our substitutes who fall into that category, and then to life skill teachers and others who deal with students who it is more difficult to mitigate within those classrooms. Again, it's limited, so at this point we're not able to open it up to all staff, but we are trying to offer it to as many employees as possible, to those who are interested. This is the vaccination. This will be round 1, and then round 2 will be given at a later date.
Ms. Spencer or Dr. Dixon or even Imogene, we did a resolution to the governor. I think across the state there was a lot of support for making teachers that first responder frontline A group. Do we know? I mean, I'm glad to hear that we have some vaccines coming on some level, but do we have any idea where that governor's ruling stands? Are teachers across the state going to be able to work their way up?
No progress as of yet.
Is that just okay?
So you got 180 vaccines. My assumption is that, in my understanding, in 21 days.
So our plan is to
guaranteed the other 180.
Guaranteed. Guaranteed is a loose term, but yes, that is absolutely the plan. The test will be administered this Friday, with round 2 being given then at the 21-day mark, which will also be on a Friday.
Has there been any discussion from the health department that when because obviously a lot of this comes over the news, but would there be any large portions set out for the district in the future?
Okay, go ahead.
So to answer the question, good evening, President Murray, trustees, and Dr. Dixon. To answer your question, Trustee Marquez, we don't have the doses guaranteed. Midland Health Department and Midland Memorial are waiting on a mass vaccine shipment, and as soon as we have those doses in hand, we're working closely with them to get the doses to our at-risk population. There's no guarantee about the second round of dosing, although the plan is in Texas, according to the Department of State Health Services, that they are holding those second doses for individuals. So we expect fully to be able to give that second dose to our staff when it becomes available. We are hopeful that we'll get the vaccines in time to do that this week for the first dose, and then we will schedule each of our staff members who choose to get vaccinated for their second dose. If it's the Pfizer vaccine, it will be 21 days, at least 21 days after the first dose. If we get the Moderna vaccine, it will be at least 28 days after the first dose.
Okay, that was my question, is which vaccine have we received? And also, is it just a first come, first served basis as to how we are lining people up in terms of it? And what has the response been?
So we won't do it on a first come, first served basis. One of the directives and requests from the CDC and the State Department of Health Services. Yes, but we will schedule those individuals, and we will, at this point, we are limited to staff who meet the criteria for Phase 1A and 1B. And the directive from DSHS and TEA has been that we're making that effort to alleviate stressors on our healthcare providers and our hospitalizations, and also limit the more severe outcomes to that population. So as we get those responses, and Mr. Bailey can speak to this, I think we had 50 to 60 responses from the survey we sent out. So at that point, we will look at other staff members who have high-risk work environments who also meet the Phase 1A and 1B criteria. We will not let vaccine be wasted or be on the shelf. If they have vaccine available for our staff, we will put that to good use.
That's what I was getting at.
Absolutely.
With the response.
Yes.
And filling our criteria. So you answered what I was going for. Thank you.
Is, real quick, and, this is, once again, this is information that I saw today, this morning, but, there's a medical professional up north that's publishing a paper, and it seems to have a lot of credibility. It's been talked about before, but, I'm a person that believes in the mental health of people, and the COVID crisis, the leadership of this country has stressed people out to no end. And it's a real thing that people are so stressed that, if I remember correctly, even if you give them the vaccination, it might not work in them because they're that stressed. Is there any communication to that fact so employees will start maybe taking care of themselves better, or try to take care of themselves better as we've gone through this COVID deal, so they can be healthy enough so when they get the vaccine, it'll work in them? Is there any communication that?
So to answer that question, we know that overall health affects immunity. We encourage all of our staff members to take care of their baseline health, which improves their immunity. There's no evidence that shows that extraordinary stressors affect the efficacy of the vaccine right now. So we encourage anyone who is in those high-risk priority groups, 1A or 1B, to sign up and to get whichever vaccine becomes available to them first.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And last month, we recognized our COVID queen, and I just want to, again, talk about how amazing Imogene Douglas and her team have been in going above and beyond. And In addition to everything that they're doing for us every single day, they are going to support the Midland Health Department in administering these vaccines so that our staff have access to them quickly as well. And so just another thing that they're doing to help support MISD staff specifically at this time in order to mitigate the risk of further spread. Moving on to technology, as provided in an update not too long ago, we recently conducted a technology audit. The technology audit found commendable practices and a supportive environment for implementing technology and noted necessary recommendations in the areas that you see on the screen: infrastructure and access, leadership, staff development, staffing and support, and teaching and learning. A project plan, and you can see a snippet of that on your screen specifically for infrastructure and access, has been developed to hold us accountable for our work, and periodic updates of our progress will be provided to you so you can see our working through that plan. I've also engaged the Region 18 Service Center to support or to facilitate the development of a robust technology plan, and that work begins tomorrow with campus principals, district leadership, instructional technology leadership, in order to ensure that our district has a robust plan to help guide us forward in our technology development. Additionally, I'm happy to inform you that all, and I repeat, all Chromebooks have arrived to our third-party vendor for configuration and will be here January 25th. And so at that time, all iPads will have arrived. They are currently on campuses. All teacher laptops are here and on campuses, and all Chromebooks will be delivered to campuses as soon as they make their way into the district. And so I'm happy to report that. And all secondary classroom phones that you approved in November have arrived in the district, are being configured, and they have already begun installation at Goddard and San Jacinto Middle School. And so prior to spring break, all secondary classrooms will have telephones in their rooms for teachers to have easy access to a phone to contact parents for safety reasons and other things such as that.
Question, if I may.
Sure.
On the Chromebooks and all the equipment that we have coming in, there's always going to be a breakdown or something breaks or tears up with this equipment. Do we have someone aligned to do repairs, if possible, on this equipment?
So our technicians are able to troubleshoot and repair various things. There are things that will be beyond repair. There is some warranty with that, with the Chromebooks coming in as well. We will be budgeting each year approximately, until we get a better handle on it, a 20% replacement cycle, just because they'll be given to students. We're not sure. We need to see about them coming back and the condition that we're in, and we want to make sure that every year we have the technology we need for every student in MISD.
So do we have to order any extras if just in case we have one malfunction or they couldn't repair one that they would?
So the numbers were essentially collected based on the data that the principals provided based on enrollment from last year. And so with that, because enrollment decreased this year, there should be additional received within the district that can be utilized for that purpose. Yes. Okay, RO systems. You see on your screen the RO system, the filter system and the storage tank. Those are complete on every single campus. We have been at the mercy of the vendors regarding the delivery of the drinking fountains. They have arrived, and they have begun installation at the 4 campuses you see: Great House, Henderson, Jones, and Mapp. I was hopeful that I would be able to stand here tonight and tell you the amazing work that occurred over the weekend and the progress that was made by our vendor that is responsible for this project. However, they have been inflicted with COVID as well, and so that has put additional delay in the project. But as soon as they are well, they will be back on campuses and back to work on this project. I was going to start, you see in the bullets regarding the facilities assessment, but those pictures are just too good not to start. Those are the new turf baseball and softball fields at Lee High School. If you've driven on the loop, the fence at the Boneyard, the softball field, it went back up over the weekend, I noticed, and so that project is near final completion. We have run into some issues at Memorial with sewer lines and gas lines as the ground has come up, and so we are working through that now. The sewer line will need to be replaced. As we got down into that, that's clay piping that is cracked, and the most recent records tell us that those pipes are at least 72 years old. And so and so we are going to work to replace those now. It makes the most sense before we put down the new field, so we don't have to take the field back up again later to replace those. We are hopeful, fingers crossed, our athletic director is on top of that project, that those fields will be ready for baseball season. Currently, obviously, they are not available for practice, and the Midland High team is practicing after school at Lee High School on their new fields. The facilities assessment, again, COVID has impacted many things. There is a slight delay upon the completion of that, but we do expect our full report by the end of this month. And once we have some time to kind of digest the information, we'll be coming back to you to talk about putting a committee together regarding the development of the plan moving forward, specifically our preventative maintenance plan and the things that we'll be taking care of within our long-term maintenance facilities, specifically utilizing $199 or other local revenue funds. Roof replacements, current projects, just as an update, we're currently working at Lee High School. Abel, Parker has been completed, Rusk, and Yarborough. The second round is scheduled for Midland, Freshman, Washington, Travis, Carver, and Bunch. I mentioned in my last update, I believe in November, that we had walked some additional roofs and asked that core samples be taken because there appeared to be numerous issues up there as well. And so in speaking with our insurance carrier's representative and based on their insurance report, the condition of Alamo, Bonham, and Lamar also appear to warrant new roofs. And so this will mean that only 3 campuses, Midland High, San Jacinto, and Long, will have roofs with an age greater than 8 years. And so that puts us in really good shape with roofs on our campuses within Midland ISD. So, any questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Spencer. Next item is item 9, discussion and action items, of which we have none. So we move to action item 10, which is closed session in accordance with Government Code Section 551.001. The first one is pursuant to 551.071, consultation with legal counsel concerning pending and/or anticipated litigation and any matters in which the attorney's duty of confidentiality conflicts with the requirements for open meetings. And the second one, pursuant to 551.074, to deliberate the appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment, duties, discipline, or dismissal of a public officer or employee. To rise out of closed session, and so just want to let you know if you're out here for that. And at this time, we will go into 35. The time is now 10:21. The board is emerging from closed session. There are no action items, and we will adjourn at 10:21. Thank you.